The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the organic wine company, ecowine.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit freespeechbeets.com. Welcome to the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. Today we're reading from ADHD and the Edison Gene, a drug-free approach to managing the unique qualities of your child. A relatively new book by me. This is from the introduction. I was in India in 1993 to help manage a community for orphans and blind children on behalf of a German charity. During the monsoon season, the week of the big Hyderabad earthquake, I took an all-day train ride almost all the way across the subcontinent, from Bombay through Hyderabad to Rajahmundry, to visit an obscure town near the Bay of Bengal. In the train compartment with me were several Indian businessmen and a physician, and we had plenty of time to talk as the country flew by from sunrise to sunset. Curious about how they viewed our children diagnosed as having attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD, I asked, "Are you familiar with those types of people who seem to crave stimulation, yet have a hard time staying with any one focus for a period of time? They may hop from career to career and sometimes even from relationship to relationship, never seeming to settle into one job or into a life with one person, but the whole time they remain creative, incredibly creative and inventive." "Ah, we know this type well," one of the men said, the other three nodding in agreement. "Well, what do you call this personality type?" I asked them. "Very holy," he said. "These are old souls near the end of their karmic cycle." Again, the other three nodded agreement, perhaps a bit more vigorously in response to my startled look. "Old souls?" I questioned, thinking that a very odd description for those who American psychiatrists have diagnosed as having a particular disorder. "Oh, yes," the physician said. "In our religion, we believe that the purpose of reincarnation is to eventually free oneself from worldly entanglement and desire. In each lifetime, we experience certain lessons, and finally we are free of this earth and can merge into the oneness of God. When a soul is very close to the end of those thousands of incarnations, he must take a few lifetimes to do many, many things, to clean up all the little threads left over from his previous lifetimes." Another businessman added, "This is a man very close to being enlightened. We have great respect for such individuals, although their lives may be difficult." Another businessman raised a finger and interjected, "But it is through the difficulties of such lives that souls are purified." The others nodded agreement. I said, "In America, they consider this behavior indicative of a psychiatric disorder." All three looked startled and then laughed. "In America, you consider our most holy men, our yogis and swamis, to be crazy people as well," said the physician, with a touch of sadness in his voice. "So it is with different cultures. We live in different worlds. We in the Western world have such holy and nearly enlightened people among us, and we say they must be mad. But as we're about to see, they may instead be our most creative individual, our most extraordinary thinkers, our most brilliant inventors and pioneers. To children among us, whom our teachers and psychiatrists say are disordered, they may in fact carry a set of abilities, a skill set that was necessary for the survival of humankind in the past. It has created much of what we presently treasure as our quality of life, and that will be critical to the survival of the human race in the future. There is immense power in how we choose to view what's happening around us, and this is terrifically important when we consider how we can best know our children and provide them with the upbringing they need, an upbringing that will lead them to be healthy, happy, functioning adults. The premise of this book is that children who have what we have come to know as ADHD are important and vital gifts to our society and culture. and in the largest sense can be an extraordinary gift to the world. In addition, for those adults who have been similarly diagnosed or defined, this book offers a new way of understanding themselves and their relationship to the world, a way that brings insight, empowerment, and success. The long history of the human race, as we'll see in this book, has conferred on us, some more than others, a set of predilections, temperaments, and abilities carried through the medium of our genetic makeup. These skills are ideally suited to life in the ever-changing world of our ancient ancestors, and we have now discovered are also ideally suited to the quickly changing modern world of cyberspace and widespread ecological and political crises that require rapid response. I will call this genetic gift the Edison gene, after Thomas Edison, who brought us electric lights and phonographs and movies and literally 10,000 other inventions. He is the model for the sort of impact a well-nurtured child carrying this gene can have on the world. While I'm principally referring to the DRD4 gene, see Chapter 5, the science of genetics is embryonic, with new discoveries being made every day. No doubt, sometime soon we'll have a better, more complete list of the specific genes that make up what Dave DeBronkart first called the Edison trait back in 1992, and Lucy Jo Palladino expanded on considerably in 1997 in her wonderful book, The Edison Trait. For the moment, though, I'll use the useful shorthand of the Edison gene. When Thomas Edison's school teacher threw him out of school in the 3rd grade for being fidgety, slow, and inattentive, his mother, Nancy Edison, the well-educated daughter of a Presbyterian minister, was deeply offended by the schoolmaster's characterization of her son. As a result, she pulled him out of school, and she became his teacher from then until the day he went off to work on his own for the railroads. And thus continues the story of people with ADHD and great success and how you can help your child be like that.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you, occupying the media 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, and missing phone calls. Okay, it is across the country right now, and I'm curious if you've been involved in any of these, been to any of these town halls. It is town hall hell for Republicans, and this is amazing. I mean, you know, back when the whole Tea Party eruption thing was happening, it was fairly, you know, easy to see the hand of the Koch network and, you know, Americans for Prosperity and Freedom Partners and all these, you know, Koch-connected groups. You know, they were renting buses, they were paying for venues, they were doing all kinds of stuff. I see no money fingerprints here, but people are showing up. You know, there's some groups that are listing, you know, on the web, you know, where you can find town halls and things like that. But I mean, there's always been that. This is all public information. So people are showing up. One of them who showed up at Tom Cotton's town hall, I believe this was day before yesterday, was Katie McFarland. And she talked about, you know, how the Affordable Care Act is saving her life. And what's so amazing is after she said this, and she asked Tom Cotton, the senator from Arkansas, what he was going to replace Obamacare with that would prevent her from dying. He basically said, "Next question." Here's the clip. Maybe it's there. We go.
My specific question is, Senator Cotton, you talk a lot about the repeal, but you have not gone into specifics on replacement. So my question is, will you commit today to replacement protections for those Arkansans like me who will die or lose their quality of life or otherwise be unable to be participating citizens trying to get their part of the American dream? Will you commit to replacements in the same way that you have committed to the repeal?
Thank you, Katie. Thank you. We'll come to it in a minute.
And she gets a standing ovation. Everybody in the room is standing up and applauding her question. And it's pretty amazing to listen to his response.
Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Let's take a couple more comments or questions about health care. And then we'll move on.
Yeah, right. Go ahead, die in the gutter. Do your job, Mr. Cotton. People are not taking this. They are seriously not taking this. But this is the Republican shtick. Is, we're going to give everybody access to health care. Well, you got access to health care. You can, stumble into the emergency room. Do your job. Do your job. What amazes me is how this whole, clip hasn't. Well, pieces of it are showing up in the corporate media, but that was. He said, and then he went on to say, he says, you asked everyone to stand up if they've been impacted by Obamacare. A lot of you did, but not all of you did. He said, which was a mistake. Everyone in this room has been hurt or helped by Obamacare. And she says, Obamacare saved my life, Senator. So Tom Cotton, this is the guy, this is the Republicans' great white hope, right? He's the young, fresh face who's going to be running for president in, 8 or 12 years, or maybe even before then. They're seeing him as the next... I don't know what, John Kennedy? I mean, the Republicans are always looking for their John Kennedy, and they can never quite find it. They thought they had it with Dan Quayle. Turned out he had an IQ that was just a little lower than room temperature. They were so excited about him. He's young, he's handsome, he's telegenic, and he's dumber than a rock. It didn't work out all that well, So anyhow, there's that going on. Fascinating. Yamiche Alcindor wrote a great piece for the New York Times. It's February 20. Yeah, it's in today's edition of the New York Times. 2 days before Election Day, she writes, Donald J. Trump traveled to Sioux City, Iowa, and proclaimed that he was the protector of federal programs aimed at helping elderly and low-income Americans. It was Hillary Clinton, he said, who was an untrustworthy steward of the working class and who would slash vital benefits. And I am going to protect and save your Social Security and your Medicare, Mr. Trump said. You made a deal a long time ago. And then she writes, the pledge followed earlier promises to enact a paid maternity leave benefit and not to make cuts in Medicaid, the health insurance program for working poor. But then she points out that, he has surrounded himself with people who are just saying the exact opposite. These so-called traditional Republicans, traditional conservatives. Now, you have to understand, conservative used to mean something in this country. Prior to the 1980s, conservative meant, yes, we want to move forward. We want to improve the country. I mean, Dwight Eisenhower is a classic example of this, building the interstate highway system. We want to move forward. We want to, have progress, but we want to do so in a thoughtful and careful way. We want to plan things out. We want to get a broad consensus. We want to make sure that, this is we use this word, a conservative approach, right? A careful approach. Well, in the 1980s, Reagan redefined the word conservative. Conservative, ever since the Reagan administration, means in the pocket of the billionaires and the big corporations. It's really just that simple. The things that used to be done in the name of conservatism are, aren't being done anymore. It was conservatives who pushed for the Environmental Protection Agency. But, now it's inconvenient for the Coke Industries and ExxonMobil and all these other big companies. And so, we get Scott Pruitt, who's been working with Devon Energy. The emails are out there now. And it's clear that this guy's just a total lapdog, a toady for the most polluting industries in the United States. And he's running the EPA. Dwight Eisenhower bragged in 1956 when he ran for re-election. This was the Republican president, the last really conservative, honest conservative Republican president. When he ran for re-election in 1956, you could easily find this online. In fact, read the Republican Party's platform in 56. They brag about the fact that they've expanded Social Security. They brag about the fact that over 1 million new people have become union members. There was, labor for Ike was, it was like, and it wasn't because Republicans wanted to destroy unions like it is now. I don't want to pay the damn union dues. My pay is low enough as it is. Well, that's, I've got a piece on Alternet today about that. It's because of the tax cuts. I did that rant earlier in the week, so I'll spare you. But this is Nowadays, conservative / Republican simply means, you know, we want to take Social Security, which has got a $2.5 trillion trust fund, and put that in the hands of Wall Street so that our buddies in Wall Street can skim 1% off the top and make themselves multi-billionaires, and they can, you know, skim 0.1% off and give it back to us Republicans in the form of campaign contributions and ads. You got here in the D.C. market, we're seeing every day on all the cable networks these ads with this young woman who used to clerk for Gorsuch, and, you know, paid for by one of these right-wing networks. And of course, he's going to be corporate friendly. We got Tom Price, who's the head of HHS. He wants to convert Medicaid to strictly capped block grants, right, to the states, and turn Medicare into a voucher program. You got Ben Carson running HUD. He has repeatedly said government programs that help the poor lead to dependency, to paraphrase Ms. Alcindor, Yamiche Alcindor. In fact, at the end of her piece, she quotes William Galston, a senior fellow at the Brookings Institute. He says, the last time we saw this kind of budgetary logic was at the beginning of the Reagan administration when he came into office, pledged to beef up defense spending and cut taxes. They tried to keep the spending increases down and the deficit increases down by whacking away at social safety net programs, many of which were cut during that period. How many times have I said this is the Reagan administration all over again? It's the Reagan administration without the class. It's the Reagan administration without Hollywood. It's the Reagan administration, you know, a gauche version of the Reagan administration. And we're going to see the same thing. Steve Mnuchin is out there talking about, yeah, we got to put together a tax package. You know, the new billionaire Goldman Sachs guy who's now our Treasury Secretary. Yeah, we got to cut taxes, right? You cut taxes on working people, you lower their wages. You cut taxes on rich people, you raise their wealth. So, of course, the Republicans want to cut taxes. And they want to cut corporate taxes. Oh, we have the highest marginal tax rate in the world for corporations. Well, it's not quite true, but it is higher than most of the other countries in the developed world, but nobody pays it. I would not object to corporate tax reform that lowered the top rate but closed the loopholes, but that's not going to happen under Republicans. They're simply going to lower the top rate. They love those loopholes. They want to keep the whole thing exactly the way it is. So, you know, Donald Trump's promises notwithstanding, what this is, you know, when this stuff starts to happen, right now, you know, his going after immigrants and all that kind of stuff, it's like, that's okay with his base. They don't, you know, in fact, they like that. But with this other stuff coming, you know, do away with your Social Security, really?
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And let's blow up the Affordable Care Act and replace it with, let's see, health savings accounts and disaster policy insurance, right? Come on. And welcome back. There we go. Gary, watching Free Speech TV in Dunellen, Florida. Hey, Gary, what's on your mind today?
Let me take you off speaker.
Thank you, Gary.
Hello, Tom.
Hey, Gary, how are you?
Pretty good. We're having a rally in Dunellen, Florida today.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you could say it. Maybe some people would hear you in Marion
I'll let
County.
you do that, Gary. Put out the pitch.
Okay. Well, we have a Magnum spring. It's one of the biggest springs in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
The county commissioners are trying to either sell it to a cattle farmer or a bottled water company.
Mm-hmm.
And at 3:30 this afternoon, we're going to meet in front of Town Hall, and it's called a rally.
Okay. And you're trying to what? Protect the spring as a public good?
Yes, that's the main thing. It's a common, right?
Yeah.
Nobody owns the water.
Yeah, should be. Should be,
Yeah.
but, you know, if the city's trying to sell it off, that's pretty grim.
Right.
Yeah.
See, I don't live where the county commissioners live in the county seat in Ocala.
Yeah.
And this is just a smaller town.
Yeah. Okay, Gary. Well, hopefully some folks will hear your pitch and will show up. Thanks for sharing the story with us. And, feel free to call back, tomorrow or next week. Actually, we discourage 2 calls in a week, but give us a call next week and let us know how it went, okay?
Okay. Thanks
Great.
a lot.
Thanks a lot, Gary. Good talking with you. Steve in DeKalb, Illinois. Hey, Steve, what's on your mind?
Hi. Well, apparently Representative Kinzinger will not meet the people who he works for in District 16. So I am sending him a large bag of chicken feed from Amazon with a note attached to it. It'll be sent as a gift, so I can attach a note. And I've just contacted the local Dems to see if I can get the word out to have as many people as possible send him a large bag of chicken feed.
Here is a business opportunity. You can sell stuff through Amazon through your home, or for that matter, you could just create a website. But if you bought like a 50-pound bag of chicken feed, and then just had some little labels made up that you could fold over and staple onto a baggie that says "chicken feed for chicken politicians" on it.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, and on the back it has the ingredients, and a website or something, and or names of politicians who it should be sent to. And then you sell those little bags for like, $2 on Amazon. I mean, they would have 20 cents worth of chicken feed. You could make a profit or at least cover all your costs for all the time and hassle that you're putting into rebagging it and posting on Amazon or posting on the internet. And people all over the country could be.
I live.
Pardon?
I believe I live in a rural. This is a very rural county, and I wouldn't be surprised if we make it here.
Yeah.
So that might actually be a good opportunity for local businesses as well. That's
exactly.
A fantastic idea.
Yeah, I forgive me for being the serial entrepreneur that I am, but every time I hear something like that, it's like, oh, a business opportunity.
Well, what was going to be a fairly immature form of a statement just potentially turned into a business opportunity.
Yeah, well, and something. I mean, I would think if you do it, be sure and let us know. We'll publicize it. I would think people all over the country would, $2 or $3 for a bag of chicken feed to be sent to their. Yeah, sure, I'd do that. And if you do it through Amazon or a credible third party, then there's no concern on their end that they're receiving anthrax or something in the mail. Steve, thanks for the call. Great talking to you. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. We just got a call from Steve. He, what state was he in? Illinois. Thank you. Yeah, DeKalb, Illinois. That's right. And he said that his congressman is refusing to hold a town hall, and so he went online. He went to Amazon.com and found a bag of chicken feed. Like 25, 50-pound bag, whatever it is, 10-pound bag. I don't know what the smallest size is that they sell. And he's having it shipped with a gift card that says, Congressman, quit being a chicken, or here's your chicken feed or whatever, to the congressman. And I said, hey, there's a business opportunity there. You could buy a 50-pound bag up little 1-ounce bags, put a little label on them, chicken feed for the chicken politician, and then, let people buy them on Amazon for $2 or $3 and plus shipping and that, or any other third-party source, or build your own website for that matter, and send the stuff out. So, I'd buy a bag of chicken feed to send if I had a chicken politician. I'm lucky and unlucky that I live in D.C. We have Eleanor Norton Holmes, who's an institution. She's brilliant, but she can't vote. So, anyway, a few other things here that so the death panels are coming, right? Apparently from the Republicans. I wanted to talk about that, and what are you doing about it? It really strikes me that a couple of things are really important, and one of them is letting other people know about your progressive media diet, right? In that context, in fact, let me just eulogize very briefly. Alan Colmes died this morning. Alan Colmes was a friend, a colleague, a brilliant talk radio host, and a decent human being, a good and decent human being. And I'm so sad to hear that my friend died. So 66 years old, amazing. anyhow, other stories here. There's a bunch of other things that I wanted to share with you. This one I found really, really interesting. You know, back when the Arab oil boycott embargo happened in the late 60s, early 70s, after the first one, Congress passed a law saying that it was illegal to export oil from the United States. And the reason why was, you know, we have a strategic petroleum reserve. We want the oil here in the United States. We don't want to be basically a third world country. We don't want to be a country that extracts our natural resources and then sells them around the world. So what's been happening is all these refineries were built down on the Gulf of Mexico, down in Texas and Louisiana. And the reason that they were, one of the reasons that they were built down there was so that these companies could export diesel fuel and gasoline, refined petroleum, refined crude oil. And we get the poisons. The poisons go downwind. That's why you've got Cancer Alley down there. We get the poisons, and we would ship the relatively clean gasoline and diesel fuel to China, to Europe, to South America, to whoever wanted it. And now we're actually exporting crude oil itself. And in fact, 1 million barrels a day. We just passed 1 million barrels a day for the second week in a row. This was just, decriminalized, as it were, on right toward the end. I think it was November of last year. So 3 months ago. And the Financial Times has a piece about this over at ft.com. U.S. crude exports surged to record high. And the line is like just flat at zero, and then all of a sudden it jumps up at the end of 2016 a little bit, and to 200 million barrels a day, and then to 400 million barrels a day. And then in this last year, it's over 1,200 million barrels a day. And the 1.2 million barrels, 1.2 million barrels a day, 1,200,000 barrels a day. And so, this should inform us. When you hear about the Dakota Access Pipeline, for example, the camp was cleared yesterday. A sad day. This is Donald Trump fancies himself to be Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson, ordered the Trail of Tears, the forcible removal of the Cherokee from Georgia, sending them out to Oklahoma, where 20-30% of them died along the way, just being marched on foot by an army on horseback, and he just destroyed Native American communities. It was his thing, and Trump is apparently doing something similar. I mean, we're going to authorize this pipeline. Sure, no problem. And this is not good. It's not good for America. It's not good for our reputation around the world. And people say, well, why do we have to have this pipeline? Well, the reason we have to have this pipeline is so that the oil billionaires can make more money by exporting American oil. Or in this case, actually, often Canadian oil. Canadian oil making its way all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico, where it can get out of North America and be sold on international markets. And why are we allowing this through the middle of America? Well, because it's profitable for a small handful of big companies that have bought politicians.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Anyhow, we'll be back with your calls in just a moment. Your thoughts on the state of politics today, and if you're getting involved in what you're doing, what you're hearing. There's a bunch of stuff that I want to talk about today. I realize it's supposed to be Anything Goes Friday, and we're gonna take a lot of your calls, but I so wanted to get Adam McKay on to share some good news with us. I realize that a lot of us are still working through, the 5 stages of grief that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross identified, from denial through bargaining to depression to anger to acceptance. As I recall, that's the order. We just have to get to acceptance as fast as we can, maybe stay in anger for a little while, and use that then to step forward and get stuff done. So let's talk about it. There's a couple of different things here. Number one, what's happening to our country? There are two kinds of populism. There's basically good populism and evil populism. Good populism is what was personified by the Sanders campaign. We're going to make the country work for all the people, right? It's what's personified by the progressive caucus in the House of Representatives and some of the good progressives in the Senate. Elizabeth Warren, Sherrod Brown. This is good populism, positive populism. The dark side populism, or evil populism, let's say, these dark side analogies I'm starting to get a little skitsy about because of the cultural, the perpetual racial overtone to it. But you know what I'm saying here. The evil side populism is the Mussolini-style populism. It's where the populist rises to power by saying, I'm here for you. I'm your champion. I'm going to take on those evil special interests. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to make it happen for you. And they get into power, and what do? They bring all the evil special interests along with them, and they throw a few bones to the people. Mussolini made the trains run on time. Hitler built the Autobahn. Massive infrastructure project. That's how Hitler kicked off his presidency. It was with a massive infrastructure project. But all along the way, these evil populists are consolidating power among themselves and with the elites in ways that are not obvious to the people. People still think that they're in charge. They're out in the streets. They're marching. We're let's go. Evil populism produces stuff like this. This is a tweet from Sean King over on Twitter, ShaunKing, Twitter.com/Sean King. He said, apparently all this has just been waiting to erupt from the dark depths of America's racist psyche. This is from a school teacher. I'm sorry, a friend of mine, Don, said, sent me a tip about this, although I follow Sean King. I missed this particular one. Don sent it to me, and that's what Don said. This is what Sean said. Sean said, this is from a school teacher. Well, actually, here's the tweet. The tweet is from Simone. It's her full name is on there. I don't know if she wants it said on the radio, so I'm not going to. So she said, so one of my students' aunts had to go pick up her daughter from school today because a boy grabbed her vagina. She's 10. When asked why, he said that if a president can do it, I can do it. Day one. And Sean King comments, this is from a school teacher. I have dozens just like this of young girls who had their crotches grabbed yesterday in the name of Donald Trump. We're seeing swastikas painted on synagogues and Muslim, what do you call a Muslim church? A mosque, thank you. And mosques, so that is evil populism. How do you counter that? What do you do with that? You call it out, you protest it, you fight against it. So here's the question. I only have a minute left. It's going to take more than a minute to get into this, so I'll continue this rant just a little bit after the bottom of the hour, and then we'll pick up your calls, your thoughts on this. But the last couple of days, I have talked about pseudo-Keynesianism, about how Reagan basically spent his way out of the worst recession since the Great Depression in 1982. Spent his way out of it. He's using the classic John Maynard Keynes fiscal stimulus. And that now Trump is talking about doing the same thing. Obama tried to do it in a responsible way. In other words, do it and pay for it by raising taxes on the rich. Trump is talking about doing it in an irresponsible way, which is doing it and don't pay for it. Just raise the national debt, and then 4 or 8 years from now, when there's a Democrat in office, start obstructing again and start screaming about the national debt that you ran up, right? I mean, this is just classic. This is the old, the old rope-a-dope. We saw this during Reagan, and they're getting ready to play this whole game all over again. A bunch of Democrats want to go along with them and say, we need the infrastructure. Others are saying, no, we need to block everything. What say you?
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
I'm inclined to fight them, to absolutely fight them on everything. If it's not clean, it's not transparent, and it's not honest, don't go there. Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All the important stories we cover and the issues we care about are at HartmannReport.com. Members of our community can comment and join the conversation. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. What a day. What an amazing day. There's a couple other things I wanted to just very quickly get to, and then I'll pick up your phone calls here. I wanted to share an excerpt from James Madison. This was April 20th, 1795. So this would have been the second year, if I'm remembering correctly. No, the fourth year of the George Washington administration. So James Madison at that point in time was, Secretary of... Jefferson was Secretary of State. Madison, no, he wasn't Treasury. That was Hamilton. Well, whatever he was. He writes, of all the enemies of true liberty, war is, perhaps, the most to be dreaded because it comprises and develops the germ of every other. War is the parent of armies, and from these proceed debt and taxes, and armies and debts and taxes are the known instruments for bringing the many under the domination of the few. A quote, by the way, that conservatives love because he mentions taxes. But it continues, and it gets really, really interesting, because this is, in my opinion, this is exactly why George W. Bush took us to war. In war, too, the discretionary power of the executive, the president, is extended. The president's influence in dealing out offices, honors, and emoluments is multiplied, and all the means of seducing the minds are added to those of seducing the force of the people. The same malignant aspect in republicanism, in other words, this new country, this is a, war is a cancer, right? The same malignant aspect in republicanism may be traced in the inequality of fortunes and the opportunities of fraud that grow out of a state of war, and in the degeneracy of manners and of morals engendered in both. No nation, James Madison wrote, no nation can preserve its freedom in the midst of continual warfare. War is, in fact, the true nurse of executive aggrandizement. Look at what happened when George W. Bush illegally, in my opinion, and well, in the opinion of the United Nations as well, declared 2 wars against countries that had not attacked us. And, one of which had absolutely nothing to do with the attack on us. War is, in fact, the true nurse of executive aggrandizement, of the aggrandizement of the presidency. In war, a physical force is to be created, and it is the executive will which is used to direct it. That's because the Constitution makes the president the commander-in-chief of the military. He says, in war, the public treasuries are to be unlocked, and it is the executive's hand which is to dispense them. In other words, the president gets to build up his armies and have his military. You're hearing Donald Trump talking this way. Oh, we got to rebuild our military, yeah. In wars, the honors and emoluments of office are to be multiplied, and it is the executive patronage, that would be the presidential branch, the executive branch patronage under which they are to be enjoyed, and it is the executive brow they are to encircle. The strongest passions and most dangerous weaknesses of the human breast, ambition, avarice, vanity, the honorable or venal love of fame, are all in conspiracy against the desire and duty of peace. In other words, a president who is ambitious, avaricious, greedy, vain, and has a venal love of fame will want war. That's a conspiracy against the desire and duty of peace. Desire and duty of peace being, of course, us. So, anyhow. Oh, he was a congressman for Virginia at that time. Thank you. Thank you for that, Troy. Troy Miller knows everything, or knows how to find it quickly. There you go. John in Stony Brook, New York. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
Hey, how you doing, Tom? It's really good to talk to you. And basically what I was calling about was I received a call a little while ago from Congressman Lee Zeldin. He's the congressman from the 1st Congressional District of New York, stating that tonight he's going to have a telephone town hall meeting.
He's a Republican, I assume.
Oh, yeah. And, that just shows cowardice on his part because, he's afraid to face the people that live out here. Now, granted, where the 1st Congressional District is the eastern end of Long Island from Comac to Montauk. Mm-hmm. And it's a heavy Republican area, but there's been an outcry from people in this district. And he's not seeing it, but I am. I went to the march in Washington, met a lot of people from my area, mm-hmm. and we're all getting together now. So I just want to get it out because I don't know if he's calling everyone, but I wanted to get out to all his constituents out here to make the phone calls, and maybe we should all go down to his office.
Is it tonight that he's doing it?
Speak in public.
Is it tonight that he's doing it?
Yeah.
What would be really interesting, I don't know if you have the time to organize this, John, but if...
It's funny that he made the phone call the day of this thing happening.
Right. It's almost like, trying to prevent it. But if you could book a VFW hall or a high school auditorium or, something that doesn't cost any money or minimal expense, mm-hmm. and set a speakerphone up on the stage and invite people to come in and, put a picture of the congressman and he's on speakerphone and, okay, we all want to say something, and then just be sure to bring a decent cameraman. And if you could get a couple hundred people in that room, it would probably go viral really fast.
You know why that won't work?
Why?
Because what he's doing is he's accepting phone calls during the day today, and he's going to select who to call back.
Oh, is that bizarre?
Yeah, right. So he just doesn't want to take any tough questions. He's going to edit it out.
That's incredible.
The outrage that I have, I want to go somewhere and I want to be able to see him face to face.
Yeah.
He's a supporter of Trump, and, I've called his office many times, and, they keep telling me, but he's our president. And I remind them that 3 million more people voted for Hillary. Right. And they go, well, but I said, in democracies, the majority wins. And I was told, well, this is a republic. And I said, understand, but it's a republic was built on democratic values.
Yeah, we have actually, if you want to get technical, we have a constitutionally limited representative democratic republic. That's what we have. For better or for worse. Yeah. Okay. Well, John, let us know how it works out. Okay. Give me a shout tomorrow or later in the next week.
Good work, man.
Great. Thanks a lot, John. Great to hear from you. Good luck. Al in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Hey, Al.
Hey, how are you?
Good. What's up?
Listen, I just wanted to share with you, I ran for office, and I just wanted to say in my campaign, if I had run a campaign similar to Trump's, I would never have gotten elected. Yet these very same people voted for Trump. So I don't understand how that...
Well, Trump, I would say the reason, in my opinion, the reason both that Trump won the Republican primary and why he won the White House was because he was running as a Democrat. He was explicitly saying, we're going to blow up these trade deals, which were all Republican trade deals. Everybody says, oh, but Bill Clinton signed NAFTA. Yeah, he did. But, it was written and promoted. In fact, NAFTA was all put together during the George Herbert Walker Bush administration. It was ready to go when Bill Clinton came into the White House. And it was Republicans who were pushing that. Every single trade deal, every single one without exception, has been opposed by a majority of Democrats and promoted by a majority of Republicans. So Trump's ran as a Democrat on trade. He said, we're going to blow up the trade deals, which, by the way, Bernie was saying as well, and ultimately so was Hillary Clinton. And then he said, I'm going to protect your Social Security, your Medicare, and your Medicaid. 100% guarantee. You made a promise a long time ago, right? Is his phrase. And
I wish someone would come up with a list that's published constantly about everything he's backstepping.
Yeah.
Because it's endless. And it's like boggling. And people are not listening to this, and I don't understand.
Well, it hasn't gotten real yet. Wait until the Republicans start messing with people's health care. Wait until the Republicans start messing with people's taxes, although the tax thing is going to be tough. Pardon?
That's a common thread in the town halls. When I saw McConnell standing there in front of his town hall, do the due diligence. Check out where Kentucky stands in the 50 states and on anything from education to poverty to whatever. He's got one of the worst states in the country, and he has the audacity to stand up there and say you're sore losers.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's pretty grim, Al. It's pretty grim, and I think that it portends well for Democrats a year and a half from now when the next election is going to be held, and this is going to be a big deal. And in state houses all across the country. By the way, don't forget to hold your state officials accountable, as well as your federal officials in state houses across the country, and of course in the U.S. Congress. It's going to be a very, very interesting time. Al, thanks for the call. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls right after this. Stick around. And welcome back. Anthony in Jackson, Mississippi. Hey, Anthony, thanks for watching us on YouTube. What's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to call and make a couple of statements, just really quick points. This past week or so, I'm showing that the legislators in Mississippi have recently attempted to vote on a piece of legislation that would allow firing squads as a type of execution. And I'm showing that it was about 12 Democrats that voted on that piece of legislation. Now, that's not even a center-right position. That is a far extreme right position. And our Democrats here in Mississippi do this regularly, where they vote against our interests or vote against what the mainstream or the base of Democrats want. And although this is happening in Mississippi and no one's probably going to be paying too much attention to it, I think that it is still just as detrimental to the Democratic Party as any of the, crazy hype.
Right. Well, this is why, Anthony, everybody is focused on federal politics, on politics at the national level. But the Koch brothers are pouring millions of dollars in their network, and other billionaire groups are funneling millions, probably hundreds of millions of dollars over a multi-year period into state races and even municipal races, even town, the city councils and mayors, and certainly into judicial races. So there's a huge effort to convert the entire country to right-wing libertarianism, and it's succeeding. Everybody says that the Democrats have lost 1,000 seats nationwide, since Obama became president. Well, yeah, but only part of that is the fault of the Democrats. I'd say most of that is the consequence of hundreds of millions of dollars being poured into local races by the Koch network and other allies of the Republican Party, big corporations and other billionaire dollars. So you've got a local problem there in Mississippi, and it's worth getting very involved in your local politics and doing something about it. So do you ever correspond with or have any dialogue with your state representatives or your state senators in Mississippi?
Well, personally, I do attempt to reach out whenever there's big issues at hand, but I am a worker. I live in poverty for the most part. I have to work every single day in order just to stay afloat. But as far as local politicians, as far as local politics, honestly, it's really quite convoluted down here on the ground. The messaging is always one that is of far right-wing messaging. It's like we don't even really have Democrats here in Mississippi, and it's crazy to say that because, this is where we should be fighting for. New York already. You don't need the strong Democrats in New York. You should be building a base in Mississippi, but I can't find a real progressive Democrat in Mississippi anywhere.
Anthony, the two suggestions. Go to ourrevolution.com and plug in your zip code. And check out indivisibleguide.com and plug in your zip code, and you will probably find folks. And these are both organizations that are, just very. In fact, Bernie Sanders, Our Revolution is Bernie's thing, and Bernie's in Kansas this week because red Kansas, Sam Brownback's Kansas, and he's there because he's trying to build the Democratic Party from the grassroots up. And he's just decided, we don't need to continue talking to ourselves. He doesn't need to be in Los Angeles or in Portland, Oregon. He needs to go to the red states, which is what he's doing. So you might want to reach out to them too, Anthony. Thanks for the call. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Dan in Princeton, Minnesota. Hey, Dan, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, hey, Tom. So I was just listening in, and I had heard that you were asking people to call in for, actions that they started to take.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to get a few things out there that we're doing here in Minnesota. So we attended the Women's March here, which there was 100,000 people, and we brought our 13-year-old daughter. And she was so inspired by that. We've never, done any marches or anything like that before. And on our way home, she just started to brainstorm ideas on what to do. And what she came up with was a weekly YouTube post that she entitled YAP, Youth About Politics. And she's done 4 episodes now. And, her mission is to try to get kids engaged in politics.
Wow. How cool is that?
In her school, she's in 7th grade, and she tried to have conversations with kids, and it just way over their head. I mean, she's like a mid-20s when it comes to knowing about politics and stuff. But her goal is to get civics kind of into it and kind of teach how government works, and then incorporate what's going on a weekly basis.
Right.
And another thing that we just recently did last night was we went to Congressman Emmer. He's our congressman here. We went to his town hall last night, which was completely ridiculous. He's got a pretty big area here.
Is he a Democrat or Republican?
He's a Republican.
Okay.
And his district is about 100 miles wide. So he decides to have it in the very northwest portion of his district in a town called Sartell at the city hall. And come to find out, and we've never gone to any one of these before, come to find out Sartell City Hall seats 96 people. And when we got there 45 minutes early, there, in my estimation, there was easily 1,000 people outside.
Wow.
And what I'd seen on the news this morning, I guess people were showing up 4 hours early. So clearly we weren't going to get a spot to sit in there. But, that was all done by design in my mind as well.
Sure.
So that there's, you know what I mean? And the irony of it is there was like a rec center hockey type thing across the street that you could have had, and it would hold, everybody. And just before I called you, I did a little bit of research on the district. In 2010, there's 80,000 people, or I'm sorry, 780,000 people in his district, and that's 2010. And then you book a venue that holds 96 seats.
Yeah, there's something wrong there. Well, and we're seeing this. I mean, the Republicans, they want to be able to check the box. They want to be able to say, yes, I did a town hall. And when I go to do town halls, people are, but they don't want to do town halls. And so we had a call earlier from somebody who said that his rep actually called him, the office called him and said, we're going to be doing a town hall and you can submit questions and we will call you. You can record a question. We will edit the questions together, and he's going to do an audio town hall on telephone tonight, and he's going to be responding to these pre-recorded questions. It's like, wow, just completely strip it of spontaneity. Give people about 10 hours advance notice before it happens so that they can't organize anything, and there's no physical location for it. It's like incredible. And in your case, the guy's doing it in a place that holds 96 people. So,
Yeah, which is completely ridiculous when you have a congressional district of that size.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. Totally with you. Dan, I got to move along, but thank you for the call, and good on you for being an activist. Paul in Islip Terrace, New York. Hey, Paul, what's up?
Hi, Tom. I wanted to let you know that I attended a town hall meeting last night at which Peter King was invited to come and did not show up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I never thought of Peter King as a coward. I mean, he's always, it's the old joke, one of the most dangerous places in America is between a camera and Peter King.
Yeah, well, I thought so too, and he absolutely wasn't there. It was held in a small hall in Central Islip, and the room was packed. It held probably about 150 people, and they were wall to wall and front to back. And what really happened was that in the 2-hour period, there were some guest speakers, some personal stories related, and then there was a whole action plan that was laid out. And a gentleman called in just a little while ago about Congressman Lee Zeldin not wanting to hold a public town hall.
Right.
And I wanted to get on the record that there is going to be, on March 4th, a People's Town Hall held in Port Jefferson with the quote unquote the elusive Lee Zeldin. In other words, he's not going to be there either. But I believe that they're going to set out something similar to what happened last night. Right. Now, places that people can go to find information is a group called LongIslandActivists.org. It's a great website. They've got some of the information there, and there was another item that came up. People are going to start pressing New York State representatives to pass universal health care in the state of New York. Yeah. And that information on that can be found on nyhcampaign.org. And people can go to those websites and find information on other ways that they can get involved.
Great.
So there's a lot going on. Also, another organization is Long Island Progressive Coalition, LIPC.org. These are all organizations that are joining together and working in a lot of different directions to let our representatives know what's going on.
That is great. That is great. Paul, thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for sharing your story and all that great information with us. Jim in Mantua, New Jersey. Hey, Jim, what's on your mind?
Am I on the air?
You are on the air, Jim.
Yes, thanks. It's in Medford, New Jersey, actually, South Jersey. And last night we had a town hall. Congressman Tom MacArthur, a Republican in New Jersey 3rd District, has refused to have town halls. And he was invited to one last night. He did not show up. He says there are paid protesters coming to these events.
He's a little snowflake, right?
Yeah.
We need to bring these guys hot cocoa and little awards with gold stars on them for showing up.
Yep. Well, what they did is had a town hall. It was South Jersey Now that actually put on the event, and it was at a middle school, and we had somewhere between 800 and 1,000 people there.
Wow.
And they had a chair set up on the stage with a picture of him. They basically video recorded the whole thing, gave it to the news media, put it on Facebook, and are sending him a complete record. People asking questions, and everybody agreeing, not booing or screaming, but
that is great. Yeah. That is great.
Great event.
Yeah. And spread it far and wide. And this is happening all over the country. People are just, they're holding, and this was Bernie's advice years ago. Get a hall, hold an event, invite your representative. If he doesn't come, shame him. If he does come, talk to him. It's like you lobby him. You're the people. You're supposed to be, lobbying the representatives. I guarantee it. What's this congressman's name again, Jim?
Thom Hartmann. Thom MacArthur.
Thom MacArthur, okay. Yeah, Thom Hartmann would have been an anomaly. So Thom MacArthur, I guarantee you he's meeting with lobbyists. I guarantee you. He will meet with the rich folks and big donors, but, he apparently doesn't want to meet with the people. Jim, thanks for the story.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by EcoWine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, EcoWine.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit freespeechbeets.com. Hi, it's the Thom Hartmann Book Club with the Thom Hartmann University, and today we're reading from Threshold, the Progressive Plan to Pull America Back from the Brink. I'm reading from the preface. This is page XIII. The world right now is tottering atop three major thresholds. An environment, that is so afire that it may soon no longer be able to support human life. An economic free market system that is almost entirely owned, run, and milked by a tiny fraction of 1% of us and has crashed and in many ways is burning around us. And an explosion of human flesh on the planet that has turned our species into a global petri dish just waiting for an effective agent to run amok. Four mistakes have brought us to this point, and the failure to recognize them at their deepest level will only push us faster toward total tipping points where we are thrown over the three thresholds and into disaster. All four of these mistakes are grounded in our culture, our way of thinking, our way of seeing the world, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are and why we're here. The first mistake is a belief that we're separate from nature. Our religions tell us that we were created by a supernatural being who is not part of this earth and not from this planet. He set us apart from all other life, and many among us, perhaps even the majority of the 6 billion of us, roughly 7 billion now, don't even believe that we are animals, but instead think we're a totally unique life form. The second mistake is a belief that an abstraction, an economic system, is divine and separate from us. This mythical so-called free market, so we believe, operates under its own divine rules and is entirely and eternally self-regulating. It is always right. The fact that worldwide it's more than 95% owned and run by fewer than 0.00001% of us, it's just the way things are, always were, and always will be. We are here to serve the economy, this belief goes. It's not here to serve us. The third mistake is a belief that men should run the world and that women are their property. While it may seem that women's rights are well advanced and society is nearly egalitarian in the developed world, the United States, Western Europe, and Australia combined are only about a quarter of the population of the world. In India, it's still a common rural practice for men to burn their wives to death simply because it's more convenient than divorce. In many Arab countries and across much of Africa and South America, it's not uncommon for women to be murdered by their families if they dishonor the family by not going along with an arranged marriage or not being a virgin at time of marriage. Even in the first world, women are routinely excluded from positions of power in the world's largest institutions, such as the Catholic Church. This is one of our biggest mistakes, not just because it's morally deficient or because it can be biologically challenged, but because its primary result is an explosion in population. The fourth mistake is a belief that the best way to influence people is through fear rather than through the power of love, compassion, or support. We stand baffled when Palestinians in Gaza vote for a political party that has a long history of terrorist activity, somehow completely overlooking the fact that that same group has been feeding people, building schools and hospitals, and providing old age and widow pensions to people in need. We think we can threaten and bomb people into liking us and behaving in ways consistent with our best interests while ignoring their own best interests. We have come to believe that we are not our brother's keeper, that we are separate from all other humanity on the planet, and in all that, we are mistaken. Civilizations have come and gone, and those long gone vanished mostly because they despoiled their commons, allowed small elites to control their economies and governments, and lived in ways that were unsustainable. Those who survive for centuries or millennia are the ones that learned how to protect their commons, engage in non-toxic commerce and governance, and organize their cultures and lifestyles in ways that could continue in the same place and the same way down through the ages. If we don't learn the lessons of the latter, we shall face the fate of the former. And just a little bit from the first chapter. This is titled Darfur, and on the border with Darfur, Sudan, March 16th, 2008. It's late morning, and I'm sitting on the dirt ground typing it into an old AA battery-operated pocket word processor, a Zorus ZR5000, in part because the nearest electricity is over 500 miles away. So is the nearest paved road and the nearest building made with anything other than mud or grass. This is Gok Machar, southern Sudan, just a few miles from the border with Darfur, a village that's swelled from 8,000 people to more than 45,000 as refugees flee the bombings and murders take place as I type these words just 50 miles to the northwest. About 300 people arrived just this morning, most with nothing more than the clothes they were wearing, many with stories of relatives who died along the way as they fled or before the UN could transport them here. When we first arrived on the African continent, we looked out onto the nighttime savannah beyond our Nairobi hotel, and it was truly a startling sight, one I'd almost forgotten since my last visit to Kenya back in 1982. The landscape is huge, horizon to horizon, like the movies you see of these parts of Africa. The land here in South Sudan is just as vast and flat. The 45,000 people around me share one single hand-pumped well, drilled a decade ago by the UN, and no other infrastructure beyond that. No buildings, no roads, no septic tank or sewer system, no schools, no clinics, no hospitals, no stores, or even storehouses. Nothing. The book is Threshold, the progressive plan to pull America back from the brink. Program that started under
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Defending America from the weapons of mass deception. Welcome back to the Thom Hartmann Program, and I'm super happy to have on the line with me Howard Epstein, the British historian, attorney, author of Guns, Traumas, and Exceptionalism, America in the 21st Century. And Howard, welcome to the program.
Hi, Tom. Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure and honor.
Thank you for joining us. So you asked this question: do we need a national program to wean young men from thinking that guns can solve their problems? How is it that American young men think this is the guns will solve their problems?
Well, what I mean by that is there comes a point in the lives of some young men when they pick up a gun and they go crazy with it, as though that would solve anything, and of course it never does.
Yeah.
It causes mayhem and tragedy.
So what are, the blurb for your book says that you offer practical suggestions for solving gun violence in the U.S. What suggestions have you, sir?
Well, I looked at supporting gun control, which I see to be failing, with an approach through gun culture. And I saw that America has suffered more national traumas than any other culturally similar country.
Yes.
And America has a higher rate of homicide by firearms than any other similar country.
Suicide by firearms, too.
I made a connection and decided to investigate it. And I listed 20 national traumas from the Wall Street crash through to the credit crunch. Mm-hmm. And amongst them was Columbine. And when I really looked into Columbine, I could see several lessons which I think very few other outrages will teach. For example, the two boys at Columbine made a movie entitled Hitmen for Hire and showed it in the school. Nobody picked up on it. They'd been in trouble with the local police. Nobody picked up on that either. The Brady checks didn't operate to prevent them from acquiring their actually rather fearsome weapons. And it's clear that where psychopaths have a desire to acquire guns, they will in the USA all too easily find a way, and apparently to the surprise of few. They also placed explosive devices all around the school grounds, but mercifully they failed to detonate, showing that where other killing methods may fail, the gun will not.
Right, guns are precision.
Other similar tragedies, Sandy Hook and Virginia Tech, and I could see the dots not being joined up.
Yeah.
And I could see from the national traumas that American society, and I'm not the first to say this, many more learned people than I have said it, American society suffers from PTSD.
Yeah, in a bunch of dimensions. We still have PTSD from the way that George W. Bush hyped 9/11 for years. I'm curious how gun control works in other countries. How does it, for example, in Great Britain, how does gun control work?
It's just guns are just not present in UK society. They're just not there. They're not there in European countries. America is unique in this way. The gun is central. You were talking about the Constitution a few minutes ago. The British take pride in Thomas Paine's contribution to the revolution, and we're aware of what goes on in America. The gun is central. It's an icon. The all-American guy, the cowboy, John Wayne, all these symbols are very important and play on the American psyche. And at the same time, American society has been pounded by these terrible traumas, the death of JFK, Martin Luther King, and the shooting at the university. The name escapes me for a minute. Several, in fact.
Yeah.
It wasn't the only one.
Well, yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on this. If you look at Western Europe and the UK, it was roughly 3,000 years ago that the Celts swept through there and destroyed most of the indigenous tribes, did away with some of the languages. They allowed people to keep their languages by and large, and their religions. But that was, there were no guns then. That was done by sword and horseback and whatnot. And then 2,000 years ago, the Catholics swept across Europe and consolidated languages and religion and all that. But again, they didn't have guns. And so the conquest of Europe, essentially by what we would call, modern Caucasian Europeans, was accomplished without guns. On the other hand, here in North America, Europeans came here with guns and found an Aboriginal society, or literally hundreds of tribes all across what we now call the United States, across North America. Many of them living in peace, some of them living in states of conflict, and we proceeded to go on a 150-year-long binge of exterminating the indigenous people in North America, and the principal weapon used to do that was guns. Is that why America has this unique gun culture and the rest of Europe doesn't? That Europe's principal interaction with guns has been during World Wars I and II, and that was pretty horrific. The United States hasn't had a war on its, within the United States since the Civil War.
You touch on the Civil War. The War of Independence also saw the gun very central to what was going on there. Thomas Paine couldn't have won the War of Independence. It was the gun that won it and that drove the British out. Then you mentioned the Civil War. We know how awful that was as well. And the conquering of the West, and as you say, what happened to the indigenous American Indians was tragic. Rich cultures that no longer exist, really, and the gun was the facilitator of this. But of course, the gun needs someone to pull the trigger.
Right.
And sadly, as I've discovered from my researchers, America has a unique propensity to use guns and to inflict large-scale violence.
But is that the consequence of the gun industry looking at American gun nuts as profit centers and promoting this so-called gun culture, or is that the consequence of 400 years of death and destruction, from the destruction of the Native Americans to slavery, all enforced by the gun, and that kind of seeping into American culture? I mean, why is it that the United States is like this?
As I say, I think it's a traumatized society, but what I tried to do was see if there was a route out of it. I don't think there's going to be a cure.
Mm-hmm.
I think there are palliatives. I think there are ameliorative steps that can be taken.
For example?
And I haven't found anyone else. So lots of people have written about trauma and warning signs and joining dots, but nobody's come up with some of the suggestions that I have in my book.
Right. So your suggestion is that we change, rather than change our guns, we change our culture. Do I have that right?
Well, I wouldn't seek to change the whole of American culture, but I will say this. I've sought not to make an enemy of either the NRA or people very much on the left wing. What I've come up with is something that is politically, if you like, with a small p, quite anodyne. The idea would be to have committees in statewide or in major cities that would look at anonymized track records of kids, and where there's a kid that has a trajectory which indicates from past experience he could, sooner or later, end up by grabbing hold of somebody's gun and killing several people in their rampage killing, then there could be an application to a judge to remove the anonymity and benign intervention to try and help this kid away from the path of violence.
So catch the killers before they kill, basically.
Get hold of them before they kill. Yes, I didn't catch your verb. What was it?
Well, I just said catch the killers, but I guess it's not literally catch. It would be more like identify and help the killers before they kill.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a remarkable concept, and that whole kind of preventative concept is something that seems baked into European culture with the precautionary principle and everything, and is the antithesis of American culture, which is, you know, ready, shoot, aim. But
borrowed ideas from all sorts of places. For example, in the UK, a teacher who sees that a kid is being radicalized has a statutory duty to report that kid, and then there's benign intervention in the UK.
Yeah, that should be the same here. British historian, author, and attorney Howard Epstein. Hang on just a second here, Howard.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
He's the author of a new book, Guns, Traumas, and Exceptionalism, America in the 21st Century. Howard, thank you for being with us today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Good talking to you. We'll be back. And welcome back. Marcy in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Hey, Marcy, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I just wanted to comment on the previous caller from Mississippi. Just wanted to let you guys know that, yes, it's very oppressive and it's very red in Mississippi. But there are Democrats like myself that are doing things. We use social media. I am in a group or organization for education for public schools. And as everyone knows, that Mississippi education is one of the lowest out of the 50 out of the states. And our group, we just yesterday got a bill knocked down for vouchers. They want to they're really trying to get rid of the public education down here and go toward just a voucher state, which would be just horrible. And so what we do is we call our senators, each one of them. We make sure that we send out letters.
You're talking to your state senators?
Excuse me?
Your state senators?
Yes, we do. Our state
that's
senators.
great.
Yesterday in the legislature, they knocked down the bill. So we get together and we fight. It's not as, as loud as the other states, but we do it, through, our social media. And that's the best way to get things done because, of course, this is Trump land and we have a lot of crazies here. So
you've also got a lot of good people in Mississippi.
Huh?
You also have a lot of good people in Mississippi, Marcy.
We do. And we stick together and we find each other. And there are progressive Democrats here. We get together and we fight. We fight in the way that we can, that's, where we can live, peacefully. But there are some Mississippians that, we are doing things. It's silently, but we are working. So
that is great.
I just wanted to.
Are there any organizing websites for Mississippi that people should know about? And have you had any conversations with your? Do you know if your United States representative, your member of the House of Representatives, is holding, or either of your senators are holding any town halls?
Well, what our representative has done, Palazzo, he does town halls through phone.
Really?
So we can call in.
He's a Republican.
And a lot of times. Excuse me?
Is he a Republican?
Yes.
Okay.
We only have Republicans.
Yeah. Okay.
So even though I am a proud, diehard Democrat, I make the Republicans work, and we call in and we put out our demands. And one of the things that we really need to do down here, and we're trying to get together, is to get people to vote. I'm African American, and it's a lot of African Americans down here that just will not vote because they're so oppressed, and they just totally believe that their vote is not going to count.
Right.
No matter what happens, their idea is that it's just going to be Republican. It's nothing that we can do. Let's just live with it.
Good on you, Marcy, for waking those folks up and getting them registered. We're out of time here, but thank you for the call, Marcy.
This year's election results have generated fear, sadness, and despair.
In the days and months ahead,
our democracy may face a crisis of historic proportions.
But there is good news.
There is good news.
There is good news. Thousands of people are stepping forward in solidarity,
resistance,
and resolve.
We join them.
We join them.
We join them.
In standing with the most vulnerable communities among us.
Those most likely to be targeted by new restrictions and policies.
We will tell their stories here.
Here.
Here on Free Speech TV.
We will lift their voices here.
Here on Free Speech TV.
In the difficult times ahead, know that we will be with you
24 hours a day.
Every day.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
There are millions of us.
Raising our voices and hearts together as one.
We've got your back.
We got your back.
Free Speech TV's got your back.
The revolution is in progress.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. I wanted to share another story with you. I want to get into some science stuff, by the way, in the next hour. I've been collecting this stuff for the last couple of weeks. But this was a particularly interesting story. Winnie Who, for a couple of days, it was the most forwarded story in the New York Times. It's still up there. I think it might be in the 20s now, but it was written on or published on February 19th. And the headline is, When Retirement Comes with a Daily Dose of Cannabis. And it says, Ruth Brunn finally said yes to marijuana. She is 98. She pops a green pill filled with cannabis oil into her mouth with a sip of vitamin water. Then Ms. Brunn, who has neuropathy, settles back in her wheelchair and waits for the jabbing pain in her shoulders, arms, and hands to ebb. She said, I don't feel high or stoned. All I know is I feel better when I take this. Ms. Brunn will soon have company. The nursing home in New York City where she lives, the Hebrew Home at Riverdale, is taking the unusual step of helping its residents use medical marijuana under a new program to treat various illnesses with an alternative to prescription drugs. And then, they go through this all across the country where medical marijuana is legal, and that's in 29 states. People are starting to use it, and she says for a whole variety of medical conditions. She writes, among them, neuropathic pain, severe muscle spasms associated with multiple sclerosis, unintentional weight loss, vomiting, nausea from chemotherapy. There are also reports that pot has helped people with Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia, as well as Parkinson's. And then she goes in and looks at these various retirement communities. And Anita Mataroso, 72, a grandmother of 6, who is the program director at this residential treatment or residential facility for elderly people. She says, I would be in a lot worse shape if I wasn't using cannabis, both physically and mentally. This grandmother of 6, she takes marijuana daily for arthritis and nerve pain, among other ailments. In the state of Washington, at least a dozen assisted living facilities have formal medical marijuana policies. And this is all being driven by demand from the residents. People saying, hey, we want something other than, narcotics. So we want something that actually works to kill pain that isn't going to get us addicted. And they get into this research. There are concerns. Older people might be more sensitive to doses of drugs, but so they start with very, very small doses, and it apparently doesn't take a lot. And this This is one story. At the Hebrew home in the Bronx, the medical marijuana program was years in the making. Daniel Reingold, the president and chief executive of River Spring Health, which operates the home, said he saw its powers firsthand when his own father, Jacob, was dying from cancer in 1999. To ease his father's pain, Mr. Reingold boiled marijuana into a murky brown tea. His father loved it and was soon laughing and eating again. Mr. Reingold said the only relief he got in those last 2 weeks of his life was the tea. And he went to the board members of the nursing home and said, hey, let's do this. And they put it into place. And Marcia Dunetz, 80, a retired art teacher who has Parkinson's, said she worried at first what people would think. It's got a stigma, she said. People don't really believe that you're not getting high if you take it. But she decided to try it anyway, and now she no longer wakes up with headaches, feels less dizzy and nauseated, and her legs don't freeze up as often. She's 80 years old. For Ms. Brunn, the marijuana pills have worked so well that she's cut back on her other pain medication, morphine. I would say that's a good outcome, wouldn't you? Medical marijuana is just exploding. I mean, recreational marijuana is all over the country, and I would bet you that a good percentage of the people in places like, Washington State, Oregon, Colorado, where recreational marijuana is not only widely available, but because of the wide availability of it, you can walk into these dispensaries, these legal recreational marijuana dispensaries, and say, I want something that's 3/4 CBD, which is the kind of, relaxes your body and kills pain stuff, but doesn't get you all that high. 3/4 CBD and only 1/4 THC. THC is the stuff that makes you smile a lot and get you the munchies, right? Stimulates your appetite. Or you can walk in and say, I want something 3/4 THC and 1/4, whatever. You can specify exactly what. In fact, you can buy pills of pure CBD in a lot of these places, which doesn't get you high at all, but it's a very effective painkiller. And so this is spreading, and I'm waiting for Jeff Sessions to go off on this, because at the federal level, marijuana is illegal. So Jeff Sessions technically has the ability right now to walk into any state, any of these 29 states with medical marijuana, or any of the, I think it's about a half a dozen states now with recreational marijuana, and he has the ability to walk into any of them and shut them down and throw people in prison. And I suspect he's going to try it. And if he does, I think there's going to be absolute hell to pay. Just like, I guarantee you, Steve Mnuchin and the Treasury Department and these guys, these billionaires who are in Trump's cabinet, they're going to try and cut taxes on billionaires. That's coming up next. They're going to try and voucherize Medicare. They're going to try and block grant Medicaid so it slowly dies on the vine. They're going to try to privatize Social Security. All this stuff is right there. You look at his cabinet. They're going to try and destroy the Environmental Protection Agency and take us back to an era when the Cuyahoga River was catching on fire. It's very clear what they're up to. And people need to be speaking out right now, saying, hey, wait a minute, we would like our country to be functional for its people.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Frankly, I think medical marijuana is a part of that. If you have any medical marijuana stories you want to share, I'd love to hear those too. So anything you want to talk about, give us a shout. We'll be back with your calls. What baffles me is why it's never, ever discussed on corporate media. Sam Brownback has destroyed Kansas. Mike Pence devastated in Indiana. The damage that Scott Walker has done to Wisconsin, you compare that to the state next to it, to Minnesota. Mark Dayton came in as the governor of Minnesota and raised taxes on wealthy people and strengthened public services and public schools. And what happened? Minnesota experienced an economic boom. Scott Walker comes in, cuts funding for schools, cuts funding for social services, cuts taxes on really rich people, and Wisconsin starts to slide. It's really obvious in Louisiana, where Bobby Jindal came into office with a surplus. and said, hey, look at this extra money. Let's do a multi-million-dollar tax break for the billionaires, for the wealthy people at least in Louisiana. I don't know how many billionaires there are in Louisiana, but there's a fair number of multi-millionaires. Let's give them all a tax break. Let's voucherize our schools, which is the big thing. Scott Walker's, he's trying to destroy public education in Wisconsin. Bobby Jindal did essentially the same thing in Louisiana. And there's no discussion of it. None. We know now what the results of Republican policies are. We've seen them at the national level with 40 years of Reaganomics. We've seen them at the local level with Kansas and Wisconsin and Louisiana, and that's just the beginning. Red state after red state. Even when Texas, when Rick Perry was running around going, running ads in California saying, bring your business to Texas. We're number one in job creation. It was number one in job creation of the worst jobs in America, the lowest paying jobs. But which economy was actually growing as an economy? Which had the highest standard of living? Which had the rising standard? It was California. Jerry Brown comes in, again, raises taxes on rich people, strengthens public education, strengthens mass transit, strengthens the infrastructure that holds the state together, which, by the way, is the infrastructure on which business roots itself. It's the soil into which business puts its roots. It's infrastructure, government-provided infrastructure. And then you look at, all the damage that Mike Pence has done in Indiana. The HIV explosion after he cut the needle exchange programs. Women calling him up, every month to report on whether or not they're having their menstrual cycle, whether their period is coming or not, so that they don't have to be under surveillance by the state just in case they're pregnant. Periods for Pence. It was a great hashtag. Have you ever seen a story about periods for Pence? This was a thing. This was a big thing in Indiana. It involved tens of thousands of people. No mention. But we know all about Hillary Clinton using a private server for her email. Do we know that George W. Bush and Dick Cheney were doing that same thing? No. They were. But any mention of it? No. We have different standards for Republicans in this country. When it comes to the media, we have different standards on reporting what's going on. Democrats, the policy issues that Democrats are taking that are wildly popular do not get covered. But if Democrats screw anything up, or if they take policy positions that are unpopular, like the president and his TPP position, they get heavily covered. Republican policy positions, they get distorted. Paul Ryan comes out and says, we want to strengthen Social Security and Medicare by privatizing them. And for some reason, that by privatizing them part just never gets through. Oh, Paul Ryan wants to strengthen Social Security and Medicare because he's going to turn it over to the banksters on Wall Street. Why don't we know this stuff? Finally, speaking of infrastructure, I don't know if you saw this. It was in the New York Times over the weekend by Edward Wong. The headline is, China launches quantum satellite in bid to pioneer secure communications. This is quantum physics. You split an elementary particle into two. They go spinning off in opposite directions, and they are what's called entangled. So even if they're a million miles apart, if you change the rotation of one of those particles, the other particle instantly changes its rotation. Faster than light, highly secure communication. The Chinese just launched a satellite to do this. And we're dithering about whether we can afford to fill our damn potholes because of 40 years of Republican austerity in this country that have devastated us. Our inner cities are falling apart. Our rural areas are experiencing heroin epidemics. Reaganomics.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
We get Reaganomics and the Chinese are doing quantum communications? This is tragic. Hey, want to hear that clip again? Subscribe to the Thom Hartmann Program on YouTube to see all your favorite show highlights. All the important stories we cover and the issues we care about are at HartmannReport.com. Members of our community can comment and join the conversation. And it's all free. And there's no ads. This is a public service. James O'Keefe, the Project Veritas, the guy who destroyed Acorn with a, in my opinion, criminally, at least morally criminally edited video that purported to show Acorn people trying to help out, prostitutes or something. I mean, it was just totally bizarre, and it was wrong. I mean, what he did. In fact, the guy that he destroyed, that James O'Keefe destroyed, had called the police on O'Keefe after O'Keefe tried this thing. They've had a number of these incidents O'Keefe has where it just, they're just bumble stumbles. It's just and now he's got another one. He's got somebody at CNN has recorded a bunch of audio back in 2009. And they're now making this available through O'Keefe. And a good story about this over at rawstory.com. And actually Politico. I guess they're quoting Politico. And there's just a giant dud. In Project Veritas's news release about the tapes, the first highlighted segment are two producers talking about the use of certain polls and why then CNN polling director Paul Steinhauser declined to use a poll by Rasmussen, a group whose polling methods are still not widely accepted. Yeah, Rasmussen is the polling company that is always the go-to one on Fox News because it always shows Republicans 20 points ahead of everybody else. But, they don't do the kind of polling that Pew does or that the Gallup does. It's not good, accurate polling. So good. They're not using Rasmussen. That makes perfect sense. Another highlight is of an assignment desk editor saying Fox News is unbearable. Do you disagree with that? And a news desk editor talking about how there's no debate about climate change. Geez, I mean, these are really smoking guns, aren't they? I mean, this is incredible. What James O'Keefe has found. It's like, wow. This is so pathetic. This is just so pathetic. Tim in Whitewater, Wisconsin. Hey, Tim, what's on your mind today?
Hey, I was thinking about the guy that talked about the empty chair at the town hall meeting and asking questions to the empty chair.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, add to that, target somebody to run against this person and have them ready. So you ask the empty chair, and when the empty chair doesn't respond, you say, well, we'd like to go to whoever who is running against or will be running against Congressperson, blah, blah, blah. What are your thoughts on this? And then as you get good responses later, that would later on pressure that Congressperson to actually show up.
Yeah.
And would also be able to say to them, look, this person who's running against you was able to answer the questions. Why aren't you able to answer the questions?
That's interesting. I wonder if, though, by actually presenting somebody who's running against that member of Congress, presumably the Democrat who would be running against them, if that turns that venue into a campaign thing for that person who's running. I mean, there's all these legalities around that, who does what and how it gets paid for and what it's called. And then the Republican would have a legitimate reason to say, this is not a town hall, it is not my town hall, and therefore I'm not attending. I get the logic, Tim, and I think it's brilliant. Maybe that could be done by a local activist who instead says, well, I'm not sure what our Republican is going to say about this, but here's what our Democrats said about it or something like that. And I could be wrong. I mean, this is something you should reality test with a Democratic candidate or a politician and ask them, what's the possibility here? But I love the suggestion.
Follow up online or something.
Yeah. We need to track down a little more detail, but I love the suggestion. I think it's a great idea. Tim, thank you for the call. Angela in Midlothian, Virginia. Hey, Angela, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm glad I got through.
So what's on your mind?
I just wanted to let you know I was at Dave Bratt's town hall meeting on Tuesday night.
Oh, that must have been entertaining. Dave Bratt is the guy who knocked off Eric Cantor, right?
Yeah, and he's the one who said that he's got women up in his grill all the time.
Right.
Yeah. So
I'm not even sure what that means, by the way.
Oh, I'm sorry. What did you say?
I said I'm not even sure what that means. I've never heard that phrase. I've got someone up in my grill.
Yeah. I just think he said he had people approaching him all the time, and so he didn't like that.
Apparently.
But he had his town hall meeting, and he headed about 60 to 100 miles away, out deep out in rural Virginia, deep into Trump country. And so the vast majority of his constituents couldn't make it to this town hall.
Right.
So
no mistake that.
I'm sorry?
I said no mistake there. He clearly knew what he was doing.
Exactly.
So you went. What happened?
Well, I mean, he had it at a really small venue, but they still had about 500. We still had about 500 people show up.
Wow.
Yeah. I was really surprised. It was great. But he really wanted to control the situation, so he had a really small room.
Right.
And so about more than half of the people couldn't get in. And the vast majority of the Brat supporters were there, and then a lot of the, Democrats had to stand out on the sidewalk and listen, overhear things.
How did he segregate them?
Well, I think, I don't know for sure because we were in the back of the line, but I think it was he made the room half and half. So like half of his supporters were allowed in, and they could sit in half of the room, and then the Democrats or whatever got to sit on the other side of the room.
Right, the people who were getting the checks from George Soros.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
How bizarre. So how did he handle it? What happened?
Well, he didn't take open questions. He very quickly, before the meeting started, he had his aides run out and give people note cards to write their questions on.
Right.
Yeah. So there was no way to ask any follow-up questions or anything like that.
Right.
And he had the he had the town hall in Blackstone, Virginia, and he had the mayor of Blackstone take those cards and supposedly randomly select questions.
Right. The Republican mayor, presumably, of Blackstone.
Yes. And he so anyway, they only allotted about 5 minutes for each topic.
Right.
And then they would ask, pretty standard run-of-the-mill questions, but one thing that they did ask about was Social Security, and he absolutely admitted that Social Security is on the table.
Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what his quote was, but the whole crowd just gasped when he started talking about it.
Even his supporters?
I didn't get to see the supporters' reaction because I was in the group out on the street. So it was mostly, mostly the Democrats out on the street.
Right.
But we just gasped. And he basically said, well, no, wait a second. If you're 10 years or less, if you have 10 years or less before you reach a retirement, then you're going to be fine. No, we're not touching you, is what he said.
Right, but we're going to kill everybody else.
Right.
It's just, that's amazing. Dave Brat, geez.
So it was pretty scary, and it was really contrived and controlled, and like I said, it was way out in the country. I mean, you drove past big Trump signs as you drove out to this place to go see him.
Well, Angela, thank you for sharing the story. I've got to move along. I can get another caller in here before the break, but thank you for sharing with us. Byron in Bozeman, Montana. Hey, Byron, what's up?
Hi, yeah. You wanted us to tell you what we're doing to get involved?
Sure.
Well, one thing I did is I ordered a book. It's called Ethics for Kids, and I'm actually dropping it off at my Republican senator's office tomorrow.
Ethics for what?
For kids.
Kid?
For kids.
For kids. KIDS. I'm sorry, your phone is kind of muffled, Byron.
I just picked up my 3-year-old from preschool, so I'm on my way home.
Yeah.
But yeah. So and that's what I figured, if they can read that, then that'd be great. If they can't, then.
Oh, that's great. So earlier we had a caller who's sending his Republican representative chicken feed, and you're sending a book on ethics for kids. I love it. Byron, thanks for the call, and thanks for listening on Sirius XM. A lot happening all across the United States right now. It is an extraordinary time to be alive. We will be back with more. I see a number of people wanted to talk about medical marijuana, too. We'll pick up those calls as well. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
Back with more of your calls, and we're going to check in with Talk Media News and some geeky science stuff coming up, too. Stick around. And welcome back. Forrest, watching Free Speech TV in Santa Barbara, California. Hey, Forrest, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Good to catch you in, and thank you so much for your intelligence and your leading the sanity in an insane world.
We're doing our best here. Thank you. Thank you, Forrest.
You do. So I wanted to let you know that here in California, I can't imagine that people won't take to the streets should they come down on medical marijuana, and I don't think that you should give those big boys any ideas about repressing it.
Yeah, well, I don't need to give him any ideas. I mean, Jeff Sessions was asked bluntly when he was being confirmed for Attorney General if he was going to prosecute medical marijuana users, and he deferred from answering the question. He gave a non-answer answer. So
gee, why am I not surprised?
Yeah, and he's a drug warrior from way back. I mean, you know, the drug wars, particularly the war against marijuana, was basically a race war or a racialized, you know, a war on basically black people. I mean, the whole reefer madness thing back in the 1920s was, you know, all about, you know, black jazz musicians getting high and wanting to go out and rape white women. And go back and watch the movies and look at the posters from the era. That was what it was all about.
Yes. But it seems to me, Tom, that not only Sessions, but all of the big pharmaceutical industries would really take, offense to the fact that we might not need their opiates anymore if people really could get relief, which, of course, they do. I have that experience in my own family. My parents, as they were aging and I was taking care of them, we did get the oil both for massage and ingestion, and it helped more than anything else they were taking. No bad side effects, no renal failure after years. It just seems startling to me that this kind of evidence just makes everybody frightened.
Yeah, and that's the piece in Winnie Hu's article in the New York Times. You know, when I got to the point where it's like this woman has dialed back her opiates because she's smoking pot, I thought, or taking marijuana pills. Okay, that's it. You know,
they're going to be up in arms. So I really encourage everybody in the states where it's now legal to not sit quietly by should that happen.
Yeah, and
I'll be on the forefront, Tom.
Say what?
I said I'll be on the forefront of that.
Yeah, me too. I've shared my own personal experiences. You know, Louise and I go back to Portland, and you know, it's legal to buy the stuff, and we get the real high CBD stuff, and it works better than any sleeping pill. I mean, it certainly does.
And I've even seen, I just want to shout out that I've seen people use it on their animals for, you know, distemper, diarrhea, things like that, and it's incredibly successful. So I can just imagine those pharmaceutical boys gearing up.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I've never, you know, I know nothing about pot in animals other than, you know.
Yeah, the tea particularly, you can wash down an animal, give it to them.
It's not toxic? Because that would be my concern. I mean, there's a lot of things we can eat that are toxic to animals, or they affect animals very differently. I mean, you know, we can eat catnip all day long.
The nice thing is you can brew it as you described with that other person and then just dilute it and give them small doses with a dropper, which I have. I've worked with animals for years, and I was just amazed and pleased to see this really needs to be reclassified a medicine rather than a drug.
As a painkiller for your animals or as an anti-anxiety drug?
Both, as a matter of fact. And like I said, even things like severe vomiting and diarrhea, a few dropperfuls of this diluted, stopped the crisis of puppies in, less than 24 hours with no other medical drugs at all.
Remarkable. Forrest, thanks for sharing your experiences with us.
And thank you, Tom, for being out there.
We'll be right back with Victoria Jones. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Let's check in with Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. On the line, this report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com. On the line with us, Victoria Jones. Hey, Victoria.
Hey, Tom.
So what's going on in the world today?
Well, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly are in Mexico, and they have been meeting with their counterparts, basically, in that country as they're on a sort of fence-mending visit after a number of issues, including, of course, the Trump administration's immigration enforcement rules that came out on Tuesday, which increased deportations that will happen at the border, including of people who are not Mexican but going to Mexico, which have really riled up Mexican officials.
In other words, they're taking Guatemalans and Salvadorans and Hondurans and dropping them off in Mexico?
Well, yes. The idea is that it could be somebody from the Czech Republic, too, so that if you have come into the United States and used Mexico as a way station on your way there, the United States is now saying that you could be deported back to Mexico.
Now, I understand the Mexican Interior Minister says, no, this isn't right. We're not going to go along with it.
Absolutely. Yes, and you're putting it quite politely, too. And they're hinting that they could take this to the United Nations.
Wow.
Or another international body. Yeah, they really are not impressed with this at all.
Are these deportations happening right now, or is this the new guidelines that Homeland Security has put out that have not yet been implemented?
They've not yet been implemented, is my understanding. These are the new guidelines that were put out on Tuesday.
Right.
These are very new guidelines. So yeah, these are not going down at all. Well, the other thing that's hanging over the meeting, this is according to New York Times reporting, is an effort to take a hard look at all American aid to Mexico, possibly using it to pay for the border wall. Now, by Friday, tomorrow, American officials are required to finish calculating all the money and grants that the U.S. provides to Mexico. And that's a task that President Trump first demanded in the executive order he signed last month, directing the construction of a border wall. And we're talking about quite a lot of money. Congress has appropriated more than $2.8 billion for various programs, of which at least $1.6 billion has been delivered to Mexico. And the kinds of programs we're talking about are out of this bilateral partnership that began in 2007, focuses on fighting organized criminal groups, re-engineering the judicial system, modernizing the border, and strengthening civil society groups. And that could all stop.
Wow. Now, is this left over from when the peso crashed and we bailed out Mexico back several decades ago, or is this the stuff that has been incrementally, we want to be good neighbors, we want to help you make your country work?
I think it's more the latter, but that's not clear from the reporting that I have seen.
Yeah, because sometimes things just take on a life of their own.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting, very interesting. We'll keep, watch this space. What else is going on in the world?
Yes, watch this space. Politico is reporting that House Republicans next week plan to derail a Democratic resolution that would have forced disclosure of President Trump's potential ties with Russia and any possible business conflicts of interest. This is according to multiple House sources. Now, what they want to do is to avoid a full House vote on a so-called resolution of inquiry, which is a roll call that would be very embarrassing and divisive for the right. So what they plan to do is to send a proposal by Representative Jerry Nadler, a Democrat from New York, to the House Judiciary Committee for a panel vote on Tuesday, according to Democratic sources, and then the Republican-controlled Judiciary Committee would kill the resolution.
All this to avoid investigating Trump's connections to Russia. It seems to me that even Russia would want this investigated.
And business conflicts of interest.
Yeah, it seems to, I've been saying from pretty much day one, if there's smoke here, to appoint an independent prosecutor. Let's find out what's going on. Let's get to the bottom of this. This is because the allegations are flying, and some of them are wild, and some of them I think are potentially provocative, not healthy things. So we need to find out what the actual facts are.
Apparently, Republicans aren't so keen on that.
Yeah.
And the Tuesday vote would also come just a few hours before Trump gives his first State of the Union address to Congress. In fact, Democrats are furious that Republicans are trying to bury the panel vote by scheduling it on a very busy news day.
That's amazing. That all suggests that the Republican Party actually thinks that their president has been up to something with a foreign power. I mean, that in and of itself is an indictment. Can you imagine if Hillary Clinton, if the tables were turned, how the Republicans would be reacting if Democrats were trying to bury something about, Hillary Clinton and not even necessarily a foreign. Well, I remember Bill Clinton, I guess it was the Al Gore campaign. He had some Chinese donors at a fundraiser in Los Angeles, and they turned it into like a 6-month scandal. Remember that? Yeah. Anyway, enough of my rant. Back to you, Victoria. What else is up?
Meanwhile, police in full riot gear have entered the Dakota Access Pipeline protest camp in North Dakota, where dozens of people are remaining in defiance of orders to leave. Now, you may be more up to date on this than I am. Most of the protesters left peacefully Wednesday when authorities closed the camp, which Army Corps of Engineers said was going to be due to advance of spring flooding. Some refused to go. About 50 officers plus entered the camp from 2 directions shortly before midday today, along with several law enforcement and military vehicles. So that's where it stands. It will obviously have developed since this was reported.
Yeah, this is a tragedy.
And they've got a SWAT vehicle, too.
Yeah, because those peaceful protesters standing there praying to protect the water are just so dangerous.
This may not end too well.
Yeah.
This afternoon, President Trump will hold a listening session on domestic and international human trafficking, including women and girls who are sexually exploited for profit. Apparently, this sudden attention to the issue was driven by Ivanka Trump. And Dina Powell, who's a White House senior counselor for economic initiatives. So it's happening at 2:30 Eastern. There will be some outside groups, including the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the International Justice Mission, Thorn, and a couple of others. Also Vice President Pence, who's had a focus on the issue, a couple of others, and some senators. I've been trying to find out who. There are 3 Republican senators. So far, I haven't been able to find out whether any Democratic senators have also been invited.
Yeah, this is a safe topic. I mean, everybody's opposed to human trafficking. There's no opposition to that. But what about, he's also meeting with a bunch of CEOs today to talk about business in the United States. I thought he was all about jobs. Why is he not meeting with workers?
He did meet with CEOs. He did meet with union leaders about a week or 2 ago.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But he hasn't met with workers.
Right.
But he did vow that he was going to bring back millions of jobs today.
Yeah. Well, good luck with that. It would be great if he could pull it off. I don't see how it's going to happen with a Republican Congress, though.
It'll be interesting to see how that does actually happen. Meantime, over at CPAC, white nationalist leader Richard Spencer, who was at CPAC, says he's been kicked out. He says he was politely asked to leave.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes.
So they are deciding to somewhat clean up their act. Remarkable. Victoria Jones with Talk Media News. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you very much.
Great talking with you. We'll be back.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by the Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com.
Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the organic wine company, ecowine.com.
The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit freespeechbeets.com. Welcome to the Thom Hartmann University Book Club. We're reading today from my newest book, Adult ADHD. The first edition, or the first draft or version of which I actually wrote some 20 years ago, but it's we've updated it and reissued it, and I think you'll find it really interesting. This is from the introduction. There's a substantial subpopulation of the world that has a common and somewhat consistent set of personality characteristics. These traits have, for many people, led to difficulties in school, relationships, and work, and are collectively known among psychologists and psychiatrists as attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. When researching this subject, I was struck by the number of ADHD adults I met and interviewed who'd chosen to become entrepreneurs, to strike out on their own, to forge their own unique lifestyles and businesses independent of others. Most often, these people are involved in an ever-changing life, often starting many businesses or regularly leading their existing companies in new directions. They thrive on stimulation and living on the edge. One biography of Ben Franklin asserts that he was America and possibly the world's first real entrepreneur, because rather than simply learning a trade and opening a lifelong business, he learned dozens of trades and created more than 30 businesses, as well as social and governmental institutions, the post office, libraries, all kinds of things Ben Franklin created for this country. This creation of something new over and over again is the core of entrepreneurship, whether you're a company owner or an entrepreneur within a company where your job constantly involves new projects or change. When writing an earlier book, Attention Deficit Disorder, A Different Perception, I heard from a psychologist who specializes in ADHD that perhaps as many as half of all entrepreneurs have ADHD. Now, a few years later, and after conversations with thousands of entrepreneurs around the country, I've come to the conclusion that nearly all entrepreneurs have ADHD to one extent or another. And I would add probably the vast majority of salespeople as well. I'm not speaking here of the fellow who carefully invests his money in a corner dry cleaning shop, runs his own business on that corner for 25 years to finally retire comfortably. While that person may meet some definitions of entrepreneurship, I'd rather refer to him as an independent small business person. Such people constitute an important and stable core of the business life of their community and of this country. Instead, I'm speaking here of those individuals who create or participate in dynamic, thriving, ever-growing, ever-changing companies. I'm speaking of the ones who take chances, who experiment. Henry Ford, who had several bankruptcies before he hit on a formula that worked. Or Thomas Edison, who tried thousands of different variations before he could get a working light bulb. These people's lives are often littered with failures, but their successes have given a spark of vitality and enterprise to America and made our country, particularly in its early days, unique in the world. They continue to bring us innovation and change that give great hope and promise for the future of our nation and the world. Some have applied their entrepreneurial characteristics to become great leaders. John F. Kennedy and Winston Churchill, for example, stand out. Others have created inventions, businesses, social institutions, and art that have changed the world. This book is about people who have overcome their challenges and in many cases actually used aspects of their ADHD to achieve prosperity or victory, and for those who would seek to emulate them. This book is for those who are willing to take chances, to forge a new niche in this business, social, cultural, political, or art world, or to create something new, and how to do that successfully. In the writing of this book, I've interviewed many people in the business world, including some of America's greatest. Few would want to jump up and raise their hands and say, yes, I have something that psychiatrists call a disorder. Nonetheless, all were, to my mind, hunters, my term for people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorders described in this book, to one extent or another. They shared stories of their successes and failures from childhood through advanced age that were remarkably similar. From these stories and my own successes and failures as a business person and entrepreneur, I've assembled a collection of specific tools and techniques for people with ADHD to achieve success in the business world. And then, we get into chapter 1, the nature of ADHD. We all experience a spectrum of levels of states of consciousness as we go through moment to moment on daily life. On one end of the spectrum is the very open, distractible state that we experience when driving or walking on a busy street, noticing all the events around us, alert to everything in our environment. At the other end of the spectrum are the tightly focused states of consciousness in which we're so intent on the book we're reading or the conversation we're having that the ticking of the clock in the room or the drone of traffic outside ceases to exist. When in a normal and relaxed state of consciousness, most people fall into a place somewhere between these two extremes of open and focused. They shift from open to focused and back with relative ease. It's difficult for the average person, however, to maintain either an extremely focused or an extremely open state of consciousness for hours at a time without such things as meditation training or the use of drugs like caffeine. The natural tendency is to snap back to the center line between the two states, which is to have a little bit of both. Some people, however, have an off-center baseline state of consciousness as their norm. Estimates vary between experts and researchers, but these people may represent as few as 10 or as much as 40% of the population. And this is the beginning of that difference that makes for ADHD and how it can be a tool, a useful thing, something that can actually help people succeed in the world. So this is our book report, our book reading today from my book, Adult ADHD, How to Succeed as a Hunter in a Farmer's World.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. An amazing story over at Politico about how Trump's handlers during the election got him to stop using Twitter. I'll get into that tomorrow. But it's just to give you a heads up, it's fascinating. I wanted to get into some science stuff. So, we don't have a geeky science alert, do we? It's been a while since we've done geeky science alerts. We need to get back to doing them. So anyhow, it's Geeky Science Hour here. I just wanted to share a couple of stories with you that I thought were particularly fascinating. And the first one here is life expectancy set to hit 90 in South Korea. Nisha Gaind, writing over at nature.com, and this is the Nature Trend Watch. South Korea is likely to be the first country in the world where average life expectancy will exceed 90 years. According to a study published in The Lancet. The Lancet is the British medical journal that has, arguably even a higher level of status and prestige than the Journal of the American Medical Association. They're very rigorous about the kind of stuff that they publish. And this was a study that projected life expectancy changes in 35 developed countries using information from the World Health Organization and a suite of 21 different statistical models that they had developed. And South Korea will have over 90. France the average life expectancy, now this is for women. For men, it's about 8 or 10 years lower in every country. Men are always dying earlier than women. So anyhow, this is just women. Over 90 in South Korea, about 88 in France, 87 in Japan, 86 in Australia, 85 in Chile, 83 in Sweden and in Germany, 86. These were all 86, 87. 86 in the United Kingdom. And then we get to the United States. The United States is 83. And for men, it's 70, a high end of 79. And then Serbia. Serbia is the only one that's below the United States. And they say, why is it? One surprise in the study is the poor performance of the United States. The authors say life expectancy there in that because this is a British journal, life expectancy over there in the United States already lags behind that of other developed nations and is predicted to be the lowest of these countries by 2030. Now, why would that be? Deepening inequalities in society and a lack of universal health care are among the key culprits. Right. Now, two stories here about glyphosate. Glyphosate is sold by Monsanto under the brand name Roundup, but it has now gone generic. The patents on glyphosate have expired. So Syngenta, Bayer, Nufarm, Dow AgroScience, a bunch of different companies are manufacturing now glyphosate. It is a weed killer, although it also kills bacteria. And there is a theory out there that the killing of the bacteria in our guts is one of the reasons why all of a sudden people are coming up with food intolerances, why there's an epidemic of I can't eat wheat anymore. Because starting about 10 years ago, 10 or 15 years ago, they started spraying glyphosate on crops just before they're harvested. It's called the death spray. And in fact, this from a piece, the Ithaka Journal, ithaka-journal.net. And the headline is Herbicides Found in Human Urine. And they're talking about to date approximately half of the 800,000 tons of glyphosate produced every year worldwide are produced in China, which is a little spooky. They were looking at urine of people who had no direct contact with agriculture, and they did not expect to find glyphosate there. And instead, the study found glyphosate. This was University of Leipzig. This was a study done in Germany. They started out looking at entire herds of animals in northern Germany, especially cattle, found lots and lots of glyphosate. So then they looked at human urine. The study found glyphosate in all urine samples of values ranging from 0.5 to 2 nanograms of glyphosate per milliliter of urine. Okay, that's 0.5 to 2. The drinking water limit is 0.1. So from your food, you could be getting 20 times more, 200% more glyphosate than you're allowed to get in your water. And then they go on to say glyphosate probably entered human populations over the past 10 years through its increasing prevalence in daily foods such as meat and dairy products, vegetable and fruit produce, and grain production. And why? It's this process. It's called desiccation. And it used to be like, when they would harvest wheat, if you've ever seen these big combines, I think they're called, these giant wheat harvesters, they've got like what looks like a paddle wheel. It's actually like a scissors blade that takes the wheat head and just kind of snaps the paddle against a flat surface and chops off the top of the wheat. And the problem that they had was that 10 or 15% of the wheat was being lost because the stalks would just bend instead of breaking, instead of cutting. And so to decrease the losses and increase the productivity of a wheat field, what they do is, well, I'll read the article here. Spraying crops to death, as desiccation should be more aptly called, means that herbicides are being sprayed directly on the crops shortly before they're harvested to facilitate the harvest by uniformly killing off all living plants, including the crops in the field. So the wheat would, within 2 or 3 days, it would go from green and stringy to brown and crunchy, right? So then when the combines come through, they chop off those wheat heads, and they just pop right off. And so you get nearly 100%. So you're recovering 15% more wheat. You're driving down your costs, increasing your yield. And the farmers think this is wonderful. Problem is the wheat is now all soaked in glyphosate. And it goes off to be made into bread, and then people discover that they can't eat wheat anymore. And I'm personally of the opinion that it's probably glyphosate. I could be wrong, but as far as I know, there's not good science been done on this. They know for potatoes, spraying herbicides on the field immediately before harvest hardens the skin and reduces the susceptibility to late blight and germination, which improves the potato's shelf life. Active compounds of the herbicide directly enter the potato through the leaves. However, decomposition of the poison of the glyphosate takes place in the body of the consumer. Right? So we are the ones who are breaking it down. And they say authorities in the European Union raised the legal limit of glyphosate in bread and wheat to 100 times the legal limit for vegetables. And for feed grains, the limit was raised 200-fold. So that's one story about glyphosate. Here's another. This is from GM Watch by Claire Robinson. The headline, Roundup residues in food cause fatty liver disease. There's an epidemic in the United States of liver failure and fatty liver disease. Some of it is associated with obesity, and the use of and the consumption apparently of high fructose corn syrup. But this takes it a whole step farther. They say cutting-edge molecular profiling analysis revealed that the popular weed killer Roundup causes serious liver damage to rats. This was not a study done on humans. This was done on animals, on rats. At low doses permitted by regulators, reports Claire Robinson. The findings suggest the residues of glyphosate-based herbicides in food could be linked to rises in the incidence of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, obesity, diabetes, and what is referred to as metabolic syndrome. The study, they note, is the first ever to show a causative link between consumption of Roundup at a real-world environmentally relevant dose and a serious disease. This was a 2-year-long study. The dose of glyphosate from Roundup administered was thousands of times below what is permitted by regulators worldwide. And nonetheless, these animals ended up suffering from non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, NALFD. They write, our results also suggest the regulators should reconsider the safety evaluation of glyphosate-based herbicides. By the way, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease currently affects 25% of the U.S. population. That's amazing. This is not what you get from drinking too much. This is what you're getting from the stuff you're eating, apparently. And, both high fructose corn syrup and now they're pointing to glyphosate. To this herbicide that's ubiquitous. I mean, they use it in soy. This is why they do GMO foods. Most of these GMO foods are Roundup ready. So you've got soybean, you've got corn, you've got potatoes, you've got wheat, right across the board. We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So a little bit of geeky science for the day. We'll be back with your calls and other news of the day after this. And welcome back. Rocky in Big Clifty, Kentucky. Hey, Rocky, thanks for watching Free Speech. What's on your mind today?
How you doing, Tom?
Great. What's up?
I was just talking about, I live in Kentucky, man. You know how that is. By the way, I'm that old country boy that talks to you every once in a while, that old hillbilly.
I remember.
By the way, I wanted to say that I used to live in Reston, Virginia. I worked there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I've lived inside the circle.
Yeah, we had a caller earlier from Reston. So you called about medical marijuana, Rocky?
Well, not exactly. I was convicted of a marijuana charge in 1996.
Yikes.
And I still can't vote.
You still can't vote?
Well, I call my law officers, officer deal. I live 15 miles away. By the way, I had seizures.
Yeah.
Also, I had a stroke. So.
Yikes. So you need medical marijuana, but you can't use it because you have a marijuana conviction? Is that what you're saying, Rocky?
Well, not exactly. Well, I was trying to talk about it that they convicted me of.
Yeah. Rocky, your phone is falling apart. We're going to have to continue this conversation another time because I'm only getting every other word. But thank you for the call. Margaret in Aberdeen, Washington. Hey, Margaret, what's on your mind? Thanks for watching Free Speech.
Thank you again for your enlightenment, Tom. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
I started smoking marijuana about 3 months ago, after 40 years. I smoked it back when I was, young and everything. But nowadays, it's not the same from the 60s and 70s. They've done so much studying on the different strains for different ailments. And personally, I gave up alcohol to smoke marijuana. And I have to tell you, drunk calling is now civic calling, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But personally, I don't have to take 2 medications that I used to take in the last 2.5 months. And one other thing, just one other point. My husband, who I tried to get a liver transplant for 3 different hospitals, the VA, Swedish Medical, and the University of Washington. And he was a brilliant jazz musician and mycologist. And he smoked marijuana most of his life. I mean, if you're a musician, that's your health insurance.
Sure.
That's what you do. And every one of them, even though he stopped marijuana because he wanted to live.
Right.
Because every one of them wanted him to stop, and he did. He went through all their programs. It wasn't addictive to him. He just stopped.
Yeah.
And you know what he died of?
No.
Every one of those hospitals that denied him gave him oxycodone.
Oh, no.
And 3 days after he died, I got 240 pills of oxycodone. Of course, I had to sign for them at the post office from the VA.
Amazing.
Because that is what he died of. Not they prevented him from having any medical care, even though he did have medical care. But, of course,
That's
the VA
terrible.
is federal. But the other hospital.
Margaret, I've got to run. We're out of time, but thank you for sharing your story with us. I'm sorry to hear of your loss. Thank you.
This year's election results have generated fear, sadness, and despair.
In the days and months ahead,
our democracy may face a crisis of historic proportions.
But there is good news.
There is good news.
There is good news. Thousands of people are stepping forward in solidarity,
Resistance,
And resolve.
we join them.
We join them
we join them.
in standing with the most vulnerable communities among us.
Those most likely to be targeted by new restrictions and policies.
We will tell their stories here.
Here.
Here on Free Speech TV.
We will lift their voices here.
Here on Free Speech TV.
In the difficult times ahead, know that we will be with you 24 hours a day.
Every day.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
You are not alone.
There are millions of us.
Raising our voices and hearts together as one.
We've got your back.
We got your back.
Free Speech TV's got your back.
The revolution is in progress.
Welcome back. And Neil in Petaluma, California. Hey, Neil, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, hi, good morning, Tom. I'm a regular user of medical marijuana. I use a refined pill.
Mm-hmm.
I take it almost every day from 100 to 200 milligrams, and I've lost about 40 pounds doing that. I've stopped drinking almost entirely, and it's been, I've been doing this over about a year and a half. I'm kind of steadily losing weight. I exercise a lot more. I stretch a lot more. It gives me real feeling for my body. I don't overstretch anymore. So it's been very positive, and I'm very worried that not only is it going to get shut down, but that we're all going to get RICO violations or something like that because we've all been part of this system that we've signed our names and we bought this stuff and legally in California, but not legally under federal law.
Right, and your name is in the database, just like the Dreamers, and if they decide...
Absolutely. I mean, if they want to come and take me tomorrow, yes, I'm part of a conspiracy. I did sign my name. I knew it was illegal federally, so I don't. There's not much defense unless they choose to pardon us all, change the designation of the drug to not as bad, which I wish Obama had done before he left office.
Yeah, that was something that would have been so easy. It's so disappointing. But we'll see what comes out of this administration. But I'm curious, Neil. 100 to 200 milligrams is a fairly high dose of THC. Are you taking mostly CBD instead of THC?
No, I'm taking THC.
Huh. And do you mind my asking what the underlying condition is that you're trying to treat, or is this just for life?
Well, what I think I'm treating is partly I've had chronic back pain and things like that, and I've lost a lot of weight. It does inhibit my appetite, but I think it's treating alcoholism.
Yeah.
I've been a low-level alcoholic for many years. I don't start at 8 in the morning or anything like that, and I don't drink every day or didn't. But it was just way too much, and for my health, I was just gaining a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And
that's true of a lot of people. I mean, I just kind of notice friends and whatnot who every night they're knocking down a couple of drinks, and And it adds up over time. It adds up in its toll on your liver. It adds up in it's hundreds of calories with every drink. And
look, I'm a big guy. I was over 300 pounds, and so if I take 2 or 3 drinks, it's probably 9 drinks. It's a big drink, and that, drinking that much gin or something like that doesn't really affect me much as a big guy. So probably taking down 1,000 or 1,500 calories a day, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And marijuana. Yes, I do take a dose that gets me very high, and that's part of the mechanism. I was getting a little high on booze. Now I'm getting very high on marijuana.
Sure.
But it doesn't affect my work. It doesn't affect my life in the morning. I'm actually feel more creative. I just don't find very many side effects at all from it.
Oh, yeah, I agree. When Louise and I go to Portland and we smoke it in the evening to sleep or vape it, you get high and you sleep really well. So what can I say?
Yeah, I love this stuff, and it's been very good. I mean, when we leave on a trip and I don't take it with me, I don't think about it. I don't crave it. It's not addictive. Everybody out there in Radioland, it's just not addictive.
Yeah, that's been my experience as well. Neil, I got to move along, but I
change on this.
Want to let some other callers in here. But Neil, thank you for the call, and thanks for sharing your story with us. Alan in Daly City, California. Hey, Alan, medical marijuana?
Yeah, hi, Tom. Yeah, I was diagnosed with cancer back in the 80s, 30 years ago, back in the dark old days before medical marijuana was even something that was talked about, really. And I had, I would have nurses, tell me sort of like, on the sly, like under their breath, like, get some marijuana, it'll help with the side effects. And it was immensely helpful to me back then. And I get very, angry when I hear people talking about denying, cancer patients the opportunity to have access to this, really something that's just really, really helpful. Because one of the things that people don't understand about like chemotherapy, besides the physical effects, there are also psychological effects. When you're going through chemotherapy, it has a very sort of almost like isolating feeling.
Yeah.
And I've talked to many people. When I was going through it, I didn't know anybody who'd been through it. And I've talked to many people over the last 30 years who've been through it, and they've told me that it's very helpful to talk to someone who's been through it, because nobody who hasn't been through it really understands it.
Yeah.
And marijuana, besides helping with the physical effects, was something that also kind of helped smooth out the sort of psychological effects as well. It's just another example of the lack of empathy, that people have in regards to this.
Well, and it's so bizarre that this basically healing herb has been criminalized and continues to be criminalized, and was originally criminalized, for the on a very racist basis, and then Nixon cranked the thing up, and John Ehrlichman has come right out and said, we couldn't criminalize being black or being anti-war in the 60s, so what we did was we jacked up the crime, the penalties for pot and heroin, and used that to break up these communities. He says, did we know that we were lying about the drugs? Yes, we did. I mean, that's a verbatim quote from John Ehrlichman inside the Nixon White House. And my concern is that Jeff Sessions is an old drug warrior. He's going to continue this thing. And it'll be a disaster for a lot of people. And Alan, thank you for sharing your story with us and your perspective. I appreciate it. We'll be back with more of your calls after this.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
We'll be right back with a whole lot more. Stick around. If you are listening to me on a commercial radio station right now, please start listening carefully to the commercials. And, say you hear a commercial for a local furniture company and you have no intention of buying furniture because you don't need it or you can't afford it, but you heard the ad. Call up that furniture company and say, I don't have the money right now to buy new furniture, but I promise you that I'm going to tell my friends about you, that you support fill in the blank station, KTNF, WCTP, you name it, right? That you support this station, and I'm gonna, and I want to thank you for supporting them. I got to tell you, I mean, I meet these business owners when I go to station events, station owners who have been supporting our progressive stations, and business owners, and typically they're local businesses. Progressive stations tend not to get so much advertising from the big corporations and much more advertising from the small local businesses, which I think is a marvelous thing. And they will tell you if they get 1 or 2 calls a week from somebody, I'm not talking about customers, but from people saying, hey, I heard your ad on, it really makes their day. It makes a big deal. It's a big difference. If you're listening on a non-commercial station, if you're listening on one of our many Pacifica affiliates, from KPFK, the biggest FM station in the United States in Los Angeles, through KBCS up in Seattle, just a powerhouse up there, XAFM in Portland, all the way to our stations in North and South Carolina. I mean, we're all over the country, right? If you're listening to one of them and they're in a pledge drive, help them out. Toss some money their way. If you're watching Free Speech TV, participate in the pledge drive. If you're listening to Sirius XM and you hear advertisers, contact those advertisers and say, thank you for supporting Sirius XM's progressive channel. There are these are just really simple things that you can do with 5 minutes once every couple of weeks that actually have a big impact. And then, of course, make the commitment to tell 5 people about the fact that, hey, there is progressive media out there and progressive websites. This morning I tweeted it out. This morning I read just this great piece by George Monbiot over at The Guardian. Now, The Guardian isn't always the most progressive publication, but they're quickly becoming my primary mainstream media news source here in the United States, because they do good stories that, and they don't just follow, they don't just chase the latest shiny thing. And so I made a small donation to them this morning, and I tweeted it out, and people are tweeting back at me going, oh, The Guardian, they're not that good. Well, no, I also support a bunch of other progressive websites too. But, and I just, today I didn't tweet about that, but, we can all do this. We need progressive media in the United States. We need these issues to be talked about. This is a critical time. I mean, this is a really critical time. And, in a couple of weeks, well, month and a half, almost 2 months, we're going to have a new president, and something's going to start happening. And, I'm not going to make predictions, and I don't want to sound like, Cassandra here. Well, Cassandra's the wrong example because she turned out to be right. But, I don't want to sound like Alex Jones and just lay conspiracy theories on you. But there's a big challenge coming, and we need to get ready for it. And Elizabeth Warren is right, rolling over and playing dead and saying, gee, Mr. Trump, what would you like me to do? I'll be a good Democrat, and I'll keep my mouth shut. That's not the way to do it. Now, the other way not to do it is to create the circular firing squad and start saying, okay, let's attack Democrats for either not being pure enough or being too pure. Right? Whether it's my picking on Joe Manchin, which I've done a couple of times, and I actually, I've met Joe a couple of times. I can't say I know him, but we're neighbors. And I think he's a good guy. I disagree with some of his policies, but thank God, we've got a Democrat from West Virginia in the Democratic coalition, even though I disagree with him on a lot of his positions. And on the other hand, you got Elizabeth Warren and Bernie in the Senate. You got the entire House caucus, progressive caucus. We can support. We just need to be supporting the party and working toward the classic ideals of the Democratic Party. And in the coming days, particularly over the holidays, as kind of the news cycle dials down a little, and because there's some amazing stuff I want to share with you today that is the news cycle, but I just wanted to get this whole media rant off my chest. I want to go back to playing for you, because we've got a lot of new listeners and viewers, back to playing for you some of my favorite FDR clips and Lyndon Johnson clips to remind us what the Democratic Party really is. And thank God there are those people in the Democratic Party, because in the Republican Party, the Everett Dirksons of the Republican Party, the high integrity, genuine conservatives in the Republican Party who used to actually put America first. I'd even put Barry Goldwater in that category, and I realize it's a very unpopular position for any progressive to take. But Barry Goldwater, Everett Dirksen, those guys are dead and gone. The Republican Party is filled with shills for billionaires and oil companies, period.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And this is going to get where it's getting really interesting, because Trump came in without that baggage, but he's filling his cabinet with it, which is a really bad sign. Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The important stories we cover and the issues we care about are at HartmannReport.com. Members of our community can comment and join the conversation. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you, and Diane in Fort White, Florida. Hey, Diane, thanks for calling. What's on your mind today?
I have a serious case of TAD.
Oh, to Trump anxiety disorder?
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be spreading across the country. Actually, it seems to be spreading around the world.
And I'm a farmer, and so what I'm doing to relieve TAD is I'm growing more food for people, because Paul Ryan, he's going to cut food stamps and Social Security.
Yeah.
He's going after poor people.
That's the plan. Yeah, well, this Reagan pioneered this, move money. It's been a 17 or no, maybe it's 14 trillion. Anyhow, it's a multi-trillion-dollar transfer of wealth since the 80s from the working class, from the middle class into the pockets of the top 1%. It's right. Trillions of dollars.
Trickle down economics, it doesn't work. We know this.
Yeah, well said. Diane, I've got to move along, but thank you. You're very, very well said. I appreciate the call. Dave in Bellingham, Washington. Hey, Dave, what's on your mind today? Thanks for listening to 91.3 FM.
Yeah, I just wanted to maybe cast a little ray of hope on the marijuana issue. I work in the industry here. I'm a transporter for a lab that does testing. And, I know there's a lot of fear out there about Mr. Sessions and what he possibly represents for the industry, but we've got a multi-billion-dollar thing going here, and I've heard rumors that there's even a state legal defense fund in place for this very, possibility. But our governor, who I've never really been a big fan of, but he himself said this is one fight that they don't want to pick.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they're going to be able to do their worst, if you know what I mean.
Well, I hope not. Because people's lives are at stake. This is there are a lot of people who are depending on medical marijuana, for quality of life issues, and in some cases, it's actually, it's the stuff that's really well documented, MS and glaucoma. There are conditions that medical marijuana really, really does treat. So, Dave, thanks for the nice words from Jay Inslee. It's Louise and I had dinner with him once years ago, but I haven't talked to him in a long time. But he was a decent congressman and a pretty good governor, he seems to be. Dave, thanks a lot. Stephen in Waunakee, Wisconsin. Am I saying it right, Stephen?
Madison, Wisconsin's close enough.
Close enough. Okay. So, what's on your mind?
Well, I just want to say it's nice to talk to you since our local 92.1 suddenly went off the air. I haven't been able to listen to you as much, but it's good to talk with you today.
Thank you.
So I'm calling to try to shed some light on the battle that's about to unfold in Wisconsin over the next legislative session regarding medical marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
And I call it a battle because I'm a 90% disabled post-9/11 veteran who has used medical marijuana to treat my service-connected injuries since 2009. I deployed to Sadr City, Iraq in 2005 and sustained an injury to my back. Had 3 surgeries in the last decade, in addition to moderate to severe PTSD. At one point, I was prescribed over 7 different medications at once from the VA, including opiates, muscle relaxers, anti-anxiety medication, etc. And then I found medical marijuana to actually be the most effective form of medicine to date. So recently, Senator Erpenbach and Chris Taylor, both of Madison, introduced both a statewide advisory referendum that would put the issue to the Wisconsin voters on the ballot in the 2018 general election.
So right now you do not have legal medical marijuana in Wisconsin?
What's that?
Do you have legal medical marijuana in Wisconsin?
I think there's a very narrow legalization for extremely terminal cancer patients, and then they're pushing right now the CBD bill through, which is a do-nothing bill, actually. It allows you to possess CBD oil, but it doesn't allow you to grow it, produce it, buy it, or anything in the state.
Right.
So actually our legislators are encouraging our citizens to commit felonies and telling them to travel to other states to get it. And
it's the same
back.
thing here in D.C. because of Maryland Representative Andy Miller. He's blocking, even though D.C. legalized and authorized stores, he blocked the funding for it because Congress controls the purse strings here. Andy Harris, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to D.C. a few times, and even though it's like quote unquote a legal city, it's extremely difficult to both find and find places if you're visiting to use without breaking the law.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's unfortunate. So in addition to the statewide advisory referendum, which would go to the voters, they've also introduced the Compassionate Cannabis Care Act, which is a bill. And since the introduction of that, a lot of the veterans from around the state are coming together to put pressure on our legislature to approve this so that folks with serious medical conditions like, cancer patients, seizure disorders, and veterans suffering from PTSD no longer have to incriminate themselves and participate in an unregulated black market. So the organization is called Wisconsin Veterans for Compassionate Care, if I can put that plug in there.
Sure.
And, we're just calling on our legislators to legalize so that we have safe access for veterans.
That's great. That's great. Stephen, is it a partisan issue in Wisconsin?
I'm sorry, what's that?
Is it a partisan issue? It seems like, generally speaking, Democrats are more in favor of legalization and Republicans are more in favor of criminalization.
No, we have polls, very reliable polls, that show I think it's around 84% of Wisconsin residents support medical marijuana.
Oh, both Democrats and Republican, voters support medical marijuana, but the politicians, the Republican politicians who are taking money from the private prison industry, from big pharma, they tend to not want medical marijuana because it will negatively impact, or legalized recreational marijuana for that matter, because it'll negatively impact the flow of bodies into the prison industry and the flow of pills out of the big pharma.
I mean, that's part of it. That's absolutely part of it. And from my experience, it's just really a lot of misinformation and just fear-mongering to the T. I mean, it still feels like reefer madness half the time when I go to the state capitol. It's really sad. But I'm glad you brought that up because actually the senator who's standing in the way of this the most is the Senator Leah Vukmir from Wauwatosa, a very conservative and gerrymandered district. She chairs the Senate Subcommittee on Health and Public Safety, and which is the committee that the bill has to go through before it can get to the Senate floor.
Yeah.
And she's just been obstructionist. I mean,
it'd be interesting to see what her contributions are from the pharmaceutical industry or from the private prison industry. Stephen, I got to move along and let some other callers in here, but thank you for a very informative call and a lot of information. I really appreciate it. Gary in Minneapolis. Hey, Gary. Thanks for listening to AM 950. What's up?
Well, I've got a marijuana story, medical marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
I have, all my life I had just regular blood pressure, 120 over 80, all my life until I was about 65.
Mm-hmm.
And I go to the VA. I'm a veteran. And so I went there for my physical, and they, it was way off the charts, like 170 something.
Whoa.
And so they gave me these pills, and I took the pills, and it lowered my blood pressure like it was supposed to. They wanted me to be 140 or less.
Mm-hmm.
So prior to taking these pills, I was getting up once a night to go to the bathroom. And after taking these pills, I was getting up 3-4 times.
Oh, because they put you on the diuretic, hydrothiazine, I think is.
Because they're diuretics.
Yeah, right. There are other.
They get rid of excess body fluids, and that relieves pressure on the blood vessels.
Right.
So I knew the pot was a vascular dilator. That's why they prescribe it to glaucoma patients. It doesn't cure them, but it gives them longevity of sight. So, because it expands blood vessels in the back of the eye. So I tried smoking it. That didn't seem to work. And then I was on the internet and I found out about making, cooking with it. So I made brownies. Now I take a half a brownie about 2 hours before I go to bed every night. And I sleep through the night. I don't have to get up once to go to the bathroom. And when I check my blood pressure in the morning, it's in the 120s and the teens.
That is great.
And this has been going on for about 3 years.
That is
4
great.
years.
That is great. Now, I'm, please don't take medical advice from our show. If you have high blood pressure, be sure to consult with your physician. But I've heard similar stories. Gary, thank you very much for the call, and thanks for sharing your experience with us. It's remarkable. I mean, again, don't stop, what you're doing unless you've got a doctor's advice. We'll be right back with more of your calls.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
I say that specifically about blood pressure. I mean, that's very serious stuff to be messing with. On the other hand, what works, works. We'll be back. And welcome back. Stephen, watching Free Speech TV in Toledo, Washington. Hey, Stephen, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom.
Hi.
Are you there, Tom?
I am. So you wanted to talk about medical marijuana?
Well, recreational. We got recreational up here. It's fantastic, and I just wanted to throw out a couple of details. When they first legalized, pretty much nobody was paying any attention to the dispensaries because they were so expensive. So, say black market marijuana sold in fractions. Say you have like eighths, quarters. An eighth is $40 on the black market.
Right, it's an eighth of an ounce.
Dispensaries I'm sorry?
Eighth of an ounce, I assume?
Right.
Yeah.
So the dispensary started out by selling eighths for, it's better than usual. So it's like $50 or so. But then they put the tax on top of that. Right. So, you're coming out with an eighth of an ounce of marijuana for, $65 or so dollars. So nobody was paying any attention to it. So the way they got around that was they started incorporating the tax into it. So you go in, you buy an eighth, and you're coming out with it $40 up to maybe $50 if it's really good. So that's how they got around that.
So now they're competitive with the black market.
Right. So all of a sudden, all the people who had stuck with the black market because it was so expensive, all of a sudden said, hey, why not? The quality's there. I'll go ahead and I'll go to the dispensary. It's way easier. Nobody wants to go on the black market.
Right. Plus, it's organic. I mean,
everybody.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
So everybody jumps on board. So the result has been an extraordinary amount of tax money flowing into the state. And the same thing in Colorado. I've been there. Fantastic how much, and these are all, primarily people don't want them in affluent areas. They don't, you don't want them next to the kids and whatnot, which is understandable. So they're in poorer parts of town. And that way the tax money infused into the town all of a sudden lifts it up. There's a little town called Parachute, Colorado, that's right kind of on the freeway there running through the Rockies. And this town was just about broke, and now they have like 3 or 4 dispensaries, and they're doing great. They're flooded with money.
It's become a tourist site.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of money in it. And that, I think, you counter the evil of the Republicans with fighting them with their own business, with money.
Well, plus it breaks the back of organized crime.
I don't know if they can stop it at this point.
Yeah, plus, Stephen, it breaks the back of organized crime. I mean, when you were buying it on the black market, the guy selling it to you might not have looked like a bad guy, but I guarantee you that somewhere along the line, unless it was just, the occasional local Cascadia, Northern California pot grower, but a lot of the pot that comes into this country is coming from gangs that kill people. I mean, it's blood money is the wrong phrase, but it's dirty stuff, and often it's contaminated with everything from, pesticides to dioxins to other drugs for that matter to potentiate it. And, buying it in a dispensary where you're getting it from an organic producer that, cares about the product and measures it and meters it and It's a good thing.
Exactly. It puts the much-needed science to it, which we've all been wanting and advocating for so long. I mean, my God, we have such an incredible substance here. Let's put science to it and figure it out.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest oppositions to it is big alcohol. They see that there's a huge threat to them, and personally in my life, I can speak to that. My brother was an alcoholic, and he was able to pull himself out of it with marijuana, and that is not an isolated story. I mean, that happens all over the world.
No, you're the second person today to invoke that. We had a fellow earlier who said he was an alcoholic and he quit drinking with pot. So, yeah. Stephen, thank you for the call. Thanks for watching Free Speech TV. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Boy, this is amazing. The Arizona Senate, this isn't by Brad Reed over at Raw Story. Arizona Senate allows cops to seize assets from anyone who takes part in a protest that has turned violent. They're expanding the state's racketeering laws, the RICO laws, so that if you are in a protest and some whack job goes off and smashes a window, you can have all your assets seized. That's crazy. I think Melissa in Chacha City? How do you say that in Arizona there, Melissa?
Huachuca City.
Thank you. You wanted to speak to this?
No, I did. It's in today's Arizona Daily Star, and I was just amazed. I make it my business to be in at least one protest a week, and what I feel is that I guess the Republicans are just so freaked out by everybody in the street that this is going to be their answer.
Yeah.
And I feel... Well, see, in the paper it says the proposal would permit police to arrest people who are planning events, even the ones who are just planning.
Wow.
They want to stick folks into these groups.
That's right. Under the RICO laws, you can call it a criminal conspiracy and go after people even before they've done anything.
Exactly.
And then seize all their assets. That's amazing.
Yeah, it truly is.
Yeah.
And I'm totally for the medical marijuana laws.
There you go. Okay, Melissa. Between this new RICO thing in Arizona and I think 6 states now are contemplating legislation. I'm wondering if this is coming out of ALEC that is basically an automobile version of Stand Your Ground that authorizes people to kill protesters. If you kill a protester with your car, as long as they're in the street, you don't get penalized. You're not prosecuted for murder and or even manslaughter, and that's pretty bizarre too. Melissa, I've got to move along. Thank you for the call. Code in Las Vegas. You wanted to speak about medical marijuana? Code? CODE? Okay, you got to listen to your phone. Max in Kennewick, Washington. Hey, Max, what's on your mind?
I appreciate your program. Second-time caller. I am a pharmacist. Also done a lot of work with addiction programs. I'm not a big advocate of medical marijuana or legalization. It's the number 2 substance we see in drug rehab programs. It's lipophilic. It stays in the brain, so if you use it, it hangs around forever. Marijuana's principal effect is a tranquilizer. Chills people out. And many of the effects that you hear testimonials from, which I've heard a lot of them on your program, are simply a side effect of the fact that people's stress and anxiety is relieved by just kind of chilling out with pot.
Yeah. So what's wrong with that, Max? Have you ever tried pot?
No studies. Huh?
Have you ever tried pot?
Yes.
And what was your experience?
Just a very mild relaxation type of thing.
Well, what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with it is what I just told you. A lot of people get hooked on it.
Well, 50,000 people this year died in the United States from alcohol. How many people died from using marijuana?
Well, I'm not comparing it to alcohol.
But I am. I am.
Alcohol is terrible.
Yeah, we've got a serious alcohol problem in this country, and people are dying from it. And pot is a good alternative. Recreational pot is a good alternative to recreational alcohol, is it not?
Could be, but you're going to just wait over time what happens if we get legalization. You're going to see more and more young people use it just because, hey, man, it's legal.
Right, like they're doing with alcohol, but you'll see less and less brain damage. I mean, alcohol is a demyelinator. It strips myelin off the sheaths of nerve
If I was
system.
an emperor, I'd take alcohol off the tracks too, but it's not going to happen because society is just going to say, well, we're going to do it anyway.
Well, people want to get high, Max. I mean, I think that this is intrinsic to being a mammal. I mean, elephants and chimpanzees go out of their way to find fermented fruit to get high. There's
case that we have to have a substance that causes us to check out from reality.
Right. So let's make that substance the most benign possible.
Well, it could be, but it's still our worst enemy. We're like the lotus eaters. We want to sit around and just chill out all day.
Okay. All right, Max.
One little point I'd like to make.
Okay.
If you want to do all your veterans a favor, tell them to lobby and get rid of the VA system.
I suspect most veterans would say that's crazy. Max, thanks a lot for the call. Rich in Sedro-Woolley, Washington. Hey, Rich, what's on your mind?
A real quick aside that the Women's Temperance Union promoted marijuana use as an alternative to alcohol. But
in the 30s, really?
Yes.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, but my real topic is, you recall the DSMO controversy.
Yes, dimethyl sulfoxide, something that can transport things across the skin into the bloodstream.
Right, but humans started using it.
All right.
And, well, there are at least two companies in Seattle that produce CBD supplements for your pets. Now, if you lived in a marijuana-adverse state and say your dog wasn't feeling too well and you wanted to give it some marijuana supplements, you could quite possibly go online and find those things.
Remarkable. And what, they dissolve it in DMSO so they can apply it topically?
No, I'm just, the comparison was the DSMO was big controversy because it was primarily for animal use.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Humans started using it.
Right, for muscle pain and things like that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay, Rich, I got to move along, but thank you for the call. Is it JR or Junior in Somerset, Kentucky?
It's JR from Somerset, Kentucky.
Hey, JR, what's on your mind?
Not much. I just wanted to call about just how Rand Paul is currently trying. I guess he is actually pro-medical marijuana, but I just feel like it's something that, like, I suffer from PTSD, and I feel like it is something that needs to be decriminalized because I don't currently do it now, although I know that it relieves like a majority of my symptoms, but I can't because I'm a single father. I'm a student. I have the risk of losing loans, and it's just, to me, it's just so frustrating because it's something that's natural and could help me, but I can't do it because it's illegal.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's got to be a tough one. And Kentucky has no medical marijuana provisions. Do I have that right, JR?
Yeah, I've heard that they're it's in the works, but there's no there's no actual production set in place or distribution system.
I mean, we've got all these states with horrible opiate problems, heroin problems, and pot. As the New York Times article pointed out, a lot of people use marijuana to decrease their opiate use or even replace their opiate use. I mean, if they're doing it in nursing homes with 90-year-olds, you would think it would work with pretty much anybody. JR, thanks for the call, and thanks for sharing your story with us. And my apologies to everybody who's on hold who didn't get in today. We will be back tomorrow. In fact, tomorrow will be Anything Goes Friday, so we can talk about anything you'd like, from medical marijuana to gun control to town halls to whatever it may be. And in the meantime, don't forget, democracy doesn't just spontaneously arise or, for that matter, spontaneously work. It's not a spectator sport. It requires all of us, which includes you. Tag, you're it. Get involved. Get active. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives,
the Thom Hartmann
visit
Program is brought to you in part by the
ThomHartmann.com.
Aiden Forecast, an investment newsletter with weekly updates of leading market indicators and a monthly deep dive into what the details of the economy and the markets mean for investors and retirees. On the web at aidenmarkets.com. Wines have some of the highest pesticide levels in our food chain. This hour brought to you by ecowine.com. Pesticide-free wines, organic wines, imported from France by the Organic Wine Company, ecowine.com. The Thom Hartmann Program is brought to you in part by Super Beets. Super Beets are sourced from non-GMO beets, and they're packed with dietary nitrates, helping to produce nitric oxide for more energy, stamina, and support for healthy blood pressure levels naturally. For more information, call 800-223-8242 or visit freespeechbeets.com.